That day, I think I was really tired because as soon as I put my daughter, Nia, to bed, I went to my room and fell asleep right away. Later, I woke up suddenly because I heard Nicholas crying. I checked the time on my phone, and it was 1 o'clock a.m. I felt relieved that I had managed to get a short nap. Feeling exhausted, I got up to comfort Nia. Then, I heard someone shouting, "Shut up, be quiet." It took me a moment to figure out where the voice was coming from. I thought it might be my mother-in-law, Jamie, yelling at me from her room. I responded, "I'm coming to calm her down now," and opened the door to the living room. There, right in front of me, was Jamie, glaring at Nia in the crib. Then suddenly, she slapped Nia's face and said, "That's enough." Shocked, I yelled louder than ever, "What are you doing?" Jamie seemed surprised for a moment and then panicked, saying, "Why didn't you calm her down sooner? This baby is too noisy." I hurried to the crib and picked up Nia to shield her from Jamie. I couldn't believe it. She hit a baby. My name is Candice, and I'm a 28-year-old housewife. I used to work in an office, but now I'm on maternity leave, taking care of the house and our baby. My husband, Miles, and I moved in with my mother-in-law, Jamie, about a year ago. Miles has a demanding job and isn't home much. He was worried about leaving me alone while I was pregnant and felt sorry for Jamie since my father-in-law passed away 2 years ago. So we decided to live with her. At first, everything was okay, but Jamie's true colors started to show, and honestly, it's been tough. "Candy, you're so slow with the housework, and can't you cook better food?" Jamie kept picking on me every chance she got. When Willis, her husband, was alive, visiting my in-laws' house was fine, and I didn't really dislike Jamie. But after Willis passed away and we moved in together, Jamie became incredibly selfish and rude. She'd constantly insult me, saying things like, "Hurry up, you're useless and slow, even ugly." The last part was just cruel and had nothing to do with chores. Being pregnant, it's natural for me to be slower. But Jamie doesn't seem to understand or care. She just wants to harass me. Since Miles, my husband, is mostly away on business trips and doesn't get home until late, I spend most days with Jamie. I kept hoping things would get better once the baby was born. Surely even Jamie, as tough as she is, would soften up around her grandchild. I clung desperately to that hope. I talked to Miles about it on WhatsApp, trying not to bother him too much at work. He always replies with, "I'm sorry, I wish I could be there for you." And he does scold Jamie when they meet. Knowing Miles supports me gives me some comfort, even when I have to endure Jamie's criticism for not doing chores well while pregnant. After safely giving birth to a healthy baby girl, Miles, bless him, managed to arrange time off from work for the birth. He left early and rushed to the hospital just before I delivered, as he held our newborn daughter. "She's really cute, like an angel." He looked so happy and said, "I'm thrilled to have a child with the man I love." I messaged Jamie on WhatsApp to share the news of our baby girl's arrival, hoping she'd visit since we lived together. But Jamie didn't come to the hospital, nor did she reply. I started to worry if she wasn't interested in her granddaughter. Could the harassment continue even now? Just as I feared, the door to my hospital room opened. "Candice, how are you feeling?" "Oh, what precious baby. She's a girl, right? She's going to be beautiful." My sister-in-law, Leela, came to visit. Leela is incredibly kind and cheerful, and she's always been good to me. I've always cherished my relationship with her. Since Leela is already married and has children, I had decided to seek her advice on parenting. "What'd you name her?" "Miles, and I decided on Nia." "Oh, that's a lovely name." "Wait, hasn't Mom arrived?" "No, I reached out to her, but she ignored my message." "Ah, I see. She can be difficult sometimes, can't she? Unpredictable and lacking common sense." "Yes, indeed. Leela is direct, and I've always valued that about her. She once told me, 'If you ever struggle living with Mom, don't hesitate to talk to me.' That offer was a lifesaver. So whenever things got tough, I would honestly vent to Leela, She understood Jamie's challenging personality, so she refrained from scolding Jamie based on what I shared, knowing Jamie would take it out on me. That's why she only intervened when absolutely necessary. At that time, simply being able to share my frustrations was enough to ease my stress. Little did I know, things would become even more challenging after Nicola was born. Jamie, I'm home. When I returned from the hospital with Nicola, Jamie didn't acknowledge her presence at all. Instead, she ordered me to clean right away. I couldn't believe it. It was as if she was pretending Nicola didn't even exist. Despite feeling upset, I placed Nicola in her crib and started cleaning. But within 5 minutes, Jamie called out angrily, "Candy, get over here." "Yes, what is it?" "That baby won't stop crying. Do something about it." I was stunned. Jamie referred to Nicola as that baby, as if she were a nuisance, and ordered me to silence her cries. Jamie continued to mistreat Nicola, demanding that I change her diaper and complaining about the crib being in the way. Each time Jamie yelled, Nicola cried louder in fear, which only angered Jamie more. It created a very tense and uncomfortable atmosphere for Nicola and me. "Jamie, her name is Nicola. Could you please call her by her name?" "Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. You're her mother, so it's your responsibility to take care of her and make sure I'm comfortable." "Look, she's crying again." Nicola started crying because Jamie had yelled just after I had put her to bed. I had to interrupt my chores to comfort Nicola, knowing Jamie would be upset if the housework was delayed. After soothing Nicola and returning to my chores, Jamie complained, "This crib is in the way, taking up so much space," and kicked it. The crib shook, and Nicola woke up crying once again. "What are you doing, Jamie?" I questioned. "Shut up. It's your fault for putting such a big thing here," she snapped back. "But you were the one who told us to move the bed to the living room because it's noisy when she cries in our room at night," I reminded her. "Are you complaining to me now?" "Stop arguing and soothe that noisy child," she ordered. Calling her that noisy child is really unkind. I had no choice but to carry out my chores while holding Nicola. Balancing housework and childcare without upsetting Jamie was incredibly challenging, and I was becoming increasingly exhausted. If I focused too much on childcare, I'd be scolded for being slow with housework, and if I prioritized chores, I'd be criticized for not parenting properly. Miles had been away on a business trip for about 2 months and wasn't home to support me. I tried reaching out to him through WhatsApp and phone calls, but he was always busy and couldn't talk for long. He apologized many times, saying, "I'm really sorry for the tough times." But I felt guilty for making him apologize when he was working so hard for our family. At the hospital, the doctor examined Nicola and reassured me that while her face was red, there were no signs of bruises or injuries, which eased my worries. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "What happened? Did you accidentally drop her?" the doctor inquired. I recounted the incident to the doctor. Just then, Layla walked into the room. "Candice, is Nicola all right?" she asked with concern. "Oh, Leela!" I exclaimed. In my frantic state, I had called Leela while in the ambulance. With Miles away on a business trip and unable to rush back immediately, I reached out to Leela despite it being the middle of the night. Leela proceeded to inform the doctor about Jamie's actions towards Nicola. The doctor was visibly shocked, and Leela trembled with anger. The next day, I returned home with Leela. After some hesitation, I entered the house alone. Jamie acted as if nothing had happened and continued to harass me as usual. "You're late. Hurry up and make breakfast," she demanded. "You forgot to take out the trash because you came home late. You really can't keep up with the housework," she criticized. "Enough already. Did you forget what happened yesterday? You hit a 3-month-old baby, remember?" I confronted Jamie, her face flushed with anger. Why should I apologize? That child was the one being noisy. I just slapped her because she wouldn't listen. It's a form of discipline. I thought she wouldn't quiet down otherwise. Jamie defended herself. "That's not discipline, it's violence." "Enough. She's just a baby. Just do your chores already. I responded, feeling exasperated. You don't seem to regret it at all. You don't even think you did anything wrong. Leela, please come in, I called out to Leela. She entered the living room, and I couldn't believe what had happened. Mom, what were you thinking? I can't believe you would do something like that. Leela exclaimed. No, that's, Jamie was flustered by Leela's sudden intervention. Mom, you do realize that what you did is legally punishable, right? Jamie's face paled at Leela's words. Leela, you're not seriously considering suing your own mother, are you? She pleaded. I won't be the one suing. Candice will. I'll simply act as her lawyer, Leela responded firmly. But wait, it was just a form of discipline, Jamie tried to justify. Who would see hitting a baby as discipline? This is assault. I interjected, firm in my stance. No matter how hard Jamie tried to rationalize her actions, they could never be excused. I will definitely pursue legal action against you. Be prepared, I informed Jamie. Jamie began to cry softly. I'm sorry, Candice. I always lose control when I'm angry and end up regretting it later. I've always felt guilty about how I treated you and Nina. I truly am sorry for what happened. Why did I raise my hand to her? I always wanted a boy as the eldest grandchild. It was Willis' wish too. It might be an old-fashioned idea, but we always hoped for a boy to carry on the family line. And when a girl was born instead, I was happy about having a granddaughter, but also felt like I failed to fulfill a promise to Willis. Every time I got angry, I couldn't control myself. I'm truly sorry, Jamie confessed through her tears. Please, Candice, help me change. I'll do anything, Jamie pleaded, offering a heartfelt apology. Jamie, please try to calm down. Let's have a proper conversation, I urged, hoping to diffuse the tension. No, I've done something unforgivable. No amount of apologies will ever be enough. Jamie continued to apologize fervently. My heart wavered, and I almost forgave her. But then Leela intervened. Don't be fooled, Candice. Mom always puts on this act of deep remorse when she's caught in a corner just to escape criticism, Leela explained. What? She did the same thing when Dad found out about her affair. He fell for her act and forgave her, but her tears dried up immediately afterward. This is probably just another performance, right? You can't fool me, Leela declared, causing Jamie to falter. What are you implying, Leela? Upon closer inspection, Jamie's tears, which had been flowing moments ago, had already ceased. It was likely fake crying. Jamie, I can't forgive you anymore. How twisted must you be to try to worm your way out of what you've done? I exclaimed. Wait a minute. I'm not trying to escape anything. Jamie protested. Okay, I understand. But we've already decided to take legal action, I stated firmly. Jamie's face reddened with anger. Don't play games with me. Why should I be subjected to this treatment by a daughter-in-law like you? How dare you? Just then, we heard the sound of the house key turning. Candice, is Nicola safe? It was Miles. Why are you here? I exclaimed in surprise. I had only contacted him on WhatsApp and thought he couldn't come because he was on a business trip. I had called him several times in the middle of the night. Yet here he was, having driven straight here since 3:00 a.m. and arriving this morning. I didn't expect Miles to be there too. Mom, stop it. I've heard about your mistreatment of Candice, and I've warned you about it multiple times, haven't I? And now you've gone and hurt my precious Nicola. I can't forgive you for this, Mom, Miles said firmly. Are you blaming me too? How cruel. After all I did raising you and Leela, Jamie retorted defensively. What are you talking about? You were hardly ever there for us. It was always Aunt who took care of us. Our memories are filled with the meals Aunt cooked, not you, Mom, Miles replied, his tone tinged with frustration. Just stop it. Plus, I think the doctor already reported it yesterday, Miles added. Huh. The hospital knows Mom hurt her, so it's only a matter of time before the police get involved. Leela chimed in. No, wait. Are you okay with your mother getting arrested? Jamie pleaded, panic evident in her voice. I'd rather not have someone who hurts a 3-month-old baby around, no matter what you say, Mom. You don't have anyone on your side now, Miles stated firmly. Jamie finally seemed to grasp the severity of her situation. Her face drained of color as she slumped in defeat. Soon after, the police arrived, and Jamie was taken into custody. As a first-time offender, she received a suspended sentence. However, Miles and Leela decided to cut ties with her and obtained restraining orders against her. Miles moved out of the in-laws' house with me and Nicola and rented an apartment. During our search for a new place, we temporarily stayed with Leela, which was immensely helpful. Candice, I'm truly sorry for everything. I'll take parental leave if necessary. I'll switch departments or even jobs to ensure your and Nicola's safety, Miles assured me. His current workplace had some issues with its environment, making it challenging for him to secure parental leave. Consequently, he resigned and found employment elsewhere. Now he returns home on time and actively helps with Nicola and household chores. We reside in a high-rise near Leela's family, often gathering for meals or enjoying barbecues together. As for Jamie, I'm not sure about her current situation, but according to neighbors, she has become completely isolated since her arrest and rarely ventures outside. It seems that her prideful nature cannot handle being associated with such reprehensible actions. However, her whereabouts no longer concern me, and since she doesn't know our new address, the chances of encountering her unexpectedly are slim. My focus now is on living happily and supporting each other as a family with Miles, Nicola, and Leela's family.
I sat quietly beside the bed, watching Emily, my wife, as she rested. She was overdue, and each day seemed to stretch endlessly, a quiet anticipation hanging in the air. "Emily," I whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She stirred, her eyes slowly opening. "How long have you been sitting there?" she asked, her voice tinged with sleep. "Long enough to remember why I fell in love with you," I replied, trying to infuse some lightness into the moment. She smiled, but it was shadowed with unease. "I just wish Margaret would let us have these last few days to ourselves," she said, a hint of frustration in her tone. Margaret, my mother-in-law, had always been a thorn in our side, particularly for Emily. I had witnessed her harsh treatment and unkind words towards Emily over the years, each incident casting a long shadow over our lives. "I spoke to her yesterday," I said, recalling the difficult conversation. "Told her we needed space, especially with the baby coming. The midwife was clear about the stress being bad for both of you." Emily's expression tightened. "And how did she take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. But I was firm. This time is about us, our new family." Her hand found mine, her grip tight. "Thank you," she said, her eyes moist. "I just can't handle her right now, not with the baby so close." "I know," I reassured her, holding her hand firmly. "I'll take care of it." We sat together, the unspoken history of Margaret's behavior between us. From demeaning comments to more overt acts of hostility, the impact on Emily was profound. But in that moment, with the gentle morning light around us, I felt a renewed determination. I was ready to protect Emily and our soon-to-be-born child, no matter what it took. As Emily fell back into a light sleep, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car outside. Peering through the window, my heart sank at the sight of Margaret's car in the driveway. She had come uninvited, as was her habit. Taking a deep breath, I stood up. It was time to confront what lay ahead. As I descended the stairs to confront Margaret, my mind raced back through the years, replaying the myriad of ways she had inflicted pain upon Emily. It was like flipping through a dark photo album, each memory a snapshot of cruelty. Emily was 16 when I first met her. Even then, Margaret's shadow loomed large over her life. I remember a high school dance where Emily's hair had been roughly chopped off, an uneven bob that she tried to hide under a hat. "Mom thought it would look better short," she had whispered to me, her eyes downcast. That was Margaret, always asserting control, even over Emily's appearance. The abuse wasn't just physical. It was the constant gaslighting, the relentless undermining of Emily's reality. Margaret, aided by David and Alex, would spin tales, weaving false narratives that left Emily questioning her own sanity. They were a united front against her, a family that seemed to relish in her confusion and pain. One particular incident stood out in my mind. It was a family dinner, a supposed celebration of Emily's promotion at work. Instead of congratulations, Margaret had spent the evening belittling Emily's achievements, comparing her unfavorably to Alex, the golden child. "You might have a fancy job, but Alex has real skills," she had said, her words dripping with disdain. It was more than just words. There were the unannounced visits, the unwanted gifts that felt more like invasions, the blatant disrespect of our space and privacy. They would sneak into our house when we were out, going through our things, leaving a trail of discomfort and unease in their wake. Their treatment of Alex was a stark contrast. Nearly 40, he lived a life devoid of responsibility or consequences, his every need catered to by Margaret. He was a bully, both physically and verbally abusive, not just to Emily, but to his own parents. Yet, in Margaret's eyes, he could do no wrong. These memories fueled my resolve as I opened the front door. Margaret stood there, her expression one of feigned concern. "Margaret," I greeted her, my tone measured. "What brings you here today?" "I just wanted to see how Emily is doing. You know, with the baby coming and all," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. "I've told you, Emily needs rest and space. Your visits are stressing her out." Margaret's face twisted into a scowl. "I'm her mother. I have every right to be here." "Not when your presence is harmful." "We've discussed this," I said, standing firm. She huffed, her eyes flashing with anger. "You're keeping me from my daughter and my grandchild." "I'm protecting my family, Margaret. That's my right." As she turned and stormed off, I knew this was far from over. But for now, I had drawn a line, one that I hoped would shield Emily and our child from the shadows of her family's past. The days following my confrontation with Margaret were tense, filled with a silence that was both welcome and foreboding. Emily, sensing the undercurrents, often asked if everything was all right. Each time I assured her it was, not wanting to add to her stress. But the truth was, things were far from all right. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the edge of something inevitable and potentially explosive. Margaret's visits had stopped, but her presence loomed like a dark cloud over our home. One afternoon, while Emily rested upstairs, I heard a knock at the door. Bracing myself for another round with Margaret, I was surprised to find David standing there, his eyes downcast. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, leading him into the living room. The tension was palpable as he sat down, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "It's about Alex," he began, his voice strained. "Margaret doesn't see it, but he's out of control." I listened, my heart heavy, as David recounted recent incidents of Alex's aggression. He spoke of unprovoked outbursts, of physical altercations that left both him and Margaret bruised and shaken. It was a side of Alex I had seen glimpses of, but never to this extent. "He needs help," David concluded, his eyes meeting mine. "But Margaret won't hear of it. She says we're imagining things, that Alex is just spirited." The revelation was jarring, yet not entirely surprising. The family's denial of Alex's behavior, their refusal to acknowledge the damage he caused, was a pattern long established. "I agree, he needs help," I said. "But if Margaret won't see it—" David nodded, a look of resignation on his face. "I just thought you should know, for Emily's sake." After he left, I sat alone, processing the conversation. The situation was more complex than I had realized. It wasn't just Margaret's treatment of Emily. It was the entire family dynamic, a toxic environment that enabled and excused Alex's behavior. I knew then that protecting Emily and our child meant more than just keeping Margaret at bay. It meant acknowledging the brokenness of her family, and perhaps accepting that some fractures were beyond repair. That night, as I lay beside Emily, her hand resting on her swollen belly, I felt a resolve harden within me. Whatever it took, I would shield them from the storm that was brewing, even if it meant cutting ties with a family that was drowning in its own dysfunction. In the days that followed the family gathering, Emily and I talked long into the nights, unraveling the years of manipulation and control exerted by her family. It was a painful process, each conversation unearthing more of the buried trauma she had endured. One evening, as we sat in the living room, Emily's phone buzzed with a message. It was from her cousin, someone we rarely heard from. The text was brief but jarring. "Heard what happened at the dinner. I'm sorry. You deserve better." This simple message from an unexpected source was like a small crack in a dam, and slowly, the truth began to seep through. Over the next few days, more messages arrived, each one shedding light on the false narratives that Margaret and her family had spun about us. "We always wondered why you seemed so distant at family events," one read. "I heard your mom talking about how difficult you were, but it never added up," said another. Each message was a revelation, peeling back the layers of deceit we had been enmeshed in. It became increasingly clear that Margaret's influence extended far beyond what we had imagined, tainting our relationships and reputation within the wider family. The most damning revelation came from an unexpected source. David, in a rare moment of candor, confided in me about the extent of Alex's hold over the family. "He's threatened us, you know," David admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "If we don't do as he says, he becomes violent. We're afraid of him." This confession was a chilling insight into the dysfunction at the heart of Emily's family. Alex, enabled and protected by Margaret, had become a tyrant in his own home, his actions unchecked and excused. As these truths came to light, Emily's resolve hardened. "We can't be part of this anymore," she said one night, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "It's not just about us now, it's about our child. I won't let them grow up in the shadow of this madness." I held her close, my own emotions a tumult of anger, sadness, and protective fierceness. "We'll start anew," I promised. "We'll build our own family, free from all this." The decision to cut ties with her family was not an easy one for Emily, but it was necessary. We began the process of disentangling our lives from theirs, each step a move towards freedom and healing. As we prepared for the birth of our child, I felt a weight lifting from our shoulders. We were stepping out of the shadows into a future we would shape on our own terms. The day our child was born was a day of mixed emotions. As I held our baby for the first time, looking into those innocent eyes, I felt a surge of love and protectiveness unlike anything I had ever known. But lurking in the back of my mind was the knowledge of the confrontation that awaited us. Emily, exhausted but radiant, cradled our baby gently. "We did it," she whispered, her eyes shining with tears. "We have our family now." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride and love. But as we basked in the joy of our new arrival, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending conflict. Margaret had made it clear she expected to be a part of our child's life, but after everything, that was impossible. In the days that followed, as we adjusted to our new life, the reality of our situation became increasingly clear. Margaret's attempts to insert herself into our lives intensified. She called repeatedly, each message a mix of sweet talk and veiled threats. The final straw came one afternoon when we found a pile of gifts outside our door, all from Margaret. Among them was a note, "To my grandchild, who I will see, no matter what." That night, Emily and I sat down and made the decision. We would go completely no contact with her family. It was the only way to protect our child and ourselves from the cycle of abuse and manipulation. The process was painful, filled with legal consultations and emotional discussions. But with each step, I felt a sense of liberation, as if we were shedding the weight of years of oppression. As I watched Emily with our baby, her laughter free and unburdened, I knew we had made the right choice. We were starting anew, creating a family built on love, respect, and safety. Our journey was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, of fear that we had severed ties with the only family Emily had ever known. But in those moments, we found strength in each other and in the love we had for our child. We moved to a new home, a place untainted by the past. Here, in this space of our own making, we began to heal. Our child grew, surrounded by love and free from the shadows that had once loomed so large. In this new dawn, we found peace. We had stepped out of the darkness and into a future of our own choosing. Our family, though small, was a fortress against the turmoil we had left behind. As I looked at Emily and our child, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had weathered the storm, and in its wake, we had found something precious, a life of our own, filled with hope and endless possibilities.
I stood frozen in the grand ballroom of the Hanson estate, watching my mother-in-law Meredith unveil my skincare line, the one I'd spent 2 years perfecting, as her family's newest venture. The crystal champagne glass nearly slipped from my trembling fingers as she gestured to the elegant display of products, each bearing the Hanson Beauty logo where my grandmother's name should have been. My name is Lucia, and this was supposed to be my moment. Instead, I was just another guest at my own execution. Ladies and gentlemen, Meredith's voice carried across the room with practiced authority. I'm thrilled to present our exclusive line of natural skincare products, developed through generations of Hanson family expertise. I felt bile rising in my throat. Those were my grandmother's recipes, centuries-old formulas passed down through my family, not hers. Next to Meredith stood her daughter Paula, beaming with unearned pride as she held up one of the signature facial serums. Lucia, my husband Tyler touched my elbow. Are you okay? You look pale. Before I could answer, Fred, my business partner, rushed over. Tell me I'm seeing things, he whispered urgently. Those aren't our formulas up there, are they? They are. My voice came out surprisingly steady. Every single one. The room spun as I remembered sharing my plans with Meredith over dinner 3 months ago. How she'd seemed so supportive, offering to connect me with suppliers through her social network. I'd even given her samples to try. And now, Meredith continued, I'd like to introduce the creative force behind Hanson Beauty, my daughter Paula. Paula stepped forward, her designer dress catching the light. Thank you, Mother. I'm so excited to share these family secrets that have been passed down through generations of Hanson women. The applause was deafening. I watched society's elite fawn over my sister-in-law as she described the exact manufacturing process I'd developed. We have to do something, Fred hissed. We have all the documentation, the original formulas. We're in my office at the Hanson building. I cut him off, where Meredith had full access as board member. Tyler squeezed my hand. Lucia, this can't be right. Mother wouldn't she? I pulled away from him. Your mother has never accepted me as part of this family. Now I know why she insisted I work from their corporate office. As if on cue, Meredith spotted us and glided over, Paula in tow. Lucia, darling, isn't this exciting? Paula has done such amazing work. I met her eyes, seeing the challenge there. She knew exactly what she'd done. Amazing indeed. Those formulas seem familiar. Oh? Meredith's smile didn't waver. Well, great minds think alike, though of course these are authentic Hanson family recipes. Really? I stepped closer. Then you won't mind explaining how you replicated my grandmother's exact proportions of Bulgarian rose oil and wild harvested herbs, the ones I spent months perfecting? Paula shifted uncomfortably. Mother? Now, Lucia. Meredith's voice dropped to a whisper. Let's not make a scene. You're part of this family now. The success of Hanson Beauty benefits all of us. I trusted you, I said, my voice cracking. I shared my grandmother's legacy with you. A legacy? Meredith laughed softly. Dear, you're an immigrant's granddaughter who married into our family. Did you really think we'd let you launch a brand under your name? This is about protecting the Hanson reputation. The room went silent in my ears. Through the blur of tears, I watched Curtis Douglas, Meredith's business partner, directing photographers to capture Paula's practiced poses with the products. Lucia, Tyler started, but I was already moving. I walked straight to the display table, picked up one of the serums, and hurled it against the marble floor. The crash silenced the room. These formulas were stolen, I announced, my voice carrying across the stunned crowd. Every recipe, every ingredient combination, they were all developed by my grandmother and me, and I can prove it. Security appeared at Meredith's subtle gesture. I think you've had too much champagne, she said smoothly. Perhaps it's best if you leave. As strong hands gripped my arms, I locked eyes with Paula. For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. "You can steal my formulas," I called out as they dragged me toward the door. "But you can't steal the knowledge behind them. Let's see how long your family legacy lasts without me." The last thing I saw before the doors closed was Tyler, standing frozen between his mother and the space where I had been. Outside in the cool night air, Fred helped me into his car. "What now?" he asked quietly. I wiped my eyes, smearing expensive mascara across my fingers. "Now?" I took a deep breath, feeling something hard and determined settle in my chest. "Now we make them regret ever hearing my grandmother's name." Fred started the engine, and as we pulled away from the Hanson estate, I watched the glittering lights grow smaller in the side mirror. They thought they'd won tonight, but they had no idea what they'd just started. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about justice, family honor, and showing the Hansons that karma always collects her debts. "Mija, stop pacing. You'll wear a hole in my floor." My grandmother Aurora's voice cut through my spiral of self-doubt. 2 weeks had passed since the Hanson Beauty launch, and I'd been hiding out in her small apartment, licking my wounds. "I should have seen it coming, Abuela." I collapsed onto her worn floral couch. The way Meredith always asked so many questions about the formulas, how she insisted I work from their office. Aurora set down her wooden spoon and wiped her hands on her apron. The familiar scent of herbs filled the kitchen, the same herbs that had inspired my skincare line. "Come here," she said, pulling out a kitchen chair. "Sit." I obeyed, watching as she opened her ancient recipe box. "Do you know why I never wrote down the exact measurements for our family's remedies?" "Because you're old school and prefer to eyeball everything?" She smacked my shoulder playfully. "No, smart mouth. Because the real secret isn't in the recipes. It's in knowing how to read the plants, how to feel the right moment to harvest, how to sense when the mixture is perfect. These things cannot be stolen." My phone buzzed again. Another call from Tyler. I silenced it. "He's called 6 times today," Aurora noted. "Let him call. He's probably just doing damage control for his precious family. Or maybe he's worried about his wife who disappeared 2 weeks ago." Before I could respond, Fred burst through the door, waving his tablet. "Lucia, you need to see this." He thrust the device at me. On screen was a beauty blog reviewing Hanson Beauty's products. The headline made my heart skip. "Hanson Beauty launch faces quality control issues. Customers report severe reactions. They're trying to mass-produce your formulas," Fred explained, pulling up more articles. "But they clearly don't understand the importance of proper ingredient sourcing or processing. There are complaints flooding in about rashes and allergic reactions." Aurora peered over my shoulder. "Ah, they used processed rose oil instead of wild harvested, didn't they? Amateurs." I scrolled through the comments. "This is bad, really bad. They're going to hurt someone." "It's their own fault," Fred said. "But that's not all. Look at their stock price." The Hanson Beauty launch had tanked their parent company's value by 30% in 2 weeks. A smile tugged at my lips before I caught myself. "I shouldn't be happy about this." "Why not?" Aurora demanded. "They stole from you. Let them learn their lesson." My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Paula. "Please call me. It's important." "Delete it," Fred advised. "We need to focus on our next move. I've been talking to some independent investors who are interested in backing your own line." I stared at the message, remembering Paula's uncertain expression at the launch. "What if—" "No," Fred interrupted. "Whatever you're thinking, no. They don't deserve your help." Aurora grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at her. "Listen to me, Lucia. Your whole life, you've tried to make yourself smaller to fit into their world. But you are not small. You are my granddaughter, and our knowledge runs deeper than their shallow roots." "But—" "No buts." She pulled out another kitchen chair. Fred, sit. Both of you are going to help me prepare a batch of my summer facial oil. It's time Lucia remembered who she really is. For the next hour, Aurora guided us through the process, explaining each step with the patience of a born teacher. The familiar motions centered me, and I felt my clarity returning with each herb we crushed, each oil we blended. See how the calendula petals release their oil? She demonstrated. You must coax it out gently, with respect. This is what they will never understand. My phone buzzed yet again, Tyler this time, with a voicemail. Lucia, please, things are falling apart here. She's not handling this well. We need to talk. Fred reached for my phone, but I stopped him. No, wait. Maybe this is exactly what we need. What do you mean? I stood up, suddenly energized. They're desperate. Their launch is failing. Their reputation is taking a hit, and they don't know how to fix it. So we let them stew for a bit longer. Then we launch our own line, the real thing, done right. And when they come begging for help, Aurora's eyes sparkled. Then you negotiate from a position of strength. I picked up the bottle of oil we'd just made, holding it to the light. The golden liquid seemed to glow from within. Exactly. But first, we need to build something they can't touch. Fred grinned. I'll call those investors tonight. Aurora squeezed my hand. Now you're thinking like my granddaughter. I saved the latest voicemail from Tyler, but didn't play it. Let them worry. Let them scramble. I had work to do, and this time I wouldn't be doing it in their shadow. Fred, I said, already reaching for my laptop, call your contact at that organic farm co-op. We're going to need a lot of calendula. And that's why we source all our ingredients directly from small-scale organic farmers, I explained to the crowd gathered in our pop-up shop. 3 months of relentless work had transformed an empty storefront into a warm, inviting space filled with the scents of herbs and essential oils. A woman raised her hand. But isn't this the same formula that Hanson Beauty? Actually, Fred smoothly interjected from beside me, these are the original formulations, developed by Lucia and her grandmother. We have extensive documentation of their development. The crowd murmured with interest. Our story had been spreading through social media, and the contrast between our authentic approach and Hanson Beauty's mass-produced disasters hadn't gone unnoticed. After the presentation, as customers lined up to sample our products, I spotted a familiar figure hovering near the entrance. Tyler. Go, Fred whispered. I've got this. I found Tyler examining our signature serum display. He looked tired with dark circles under his eyes and his usually perfect suit slightly rumpled. Impressive, he said, gesturing around the shop. Mother's furious, by the way. I'm devastated, I replied dryly. Why are you here, Tyler? He ran a hand through his hair. Can we talk? Somewhere private? I led him to our small back office, keeping the door open. Talk. The company's in trouble, Lucia. Real trouble. Hanson Beauty is hemorrhaging money, and the FDA is investigating the adverse reaction reports. That tends to happen when you steal formulas you don't understand. Paula's a mess. She barely leaves her apartment anymore. And Mother? He hesitated. She's not handling any of this well. And this concerns me because you're my wife, Tyler exploded. Because despite everything, we're still family. A customer peered curiously into the office. I lowered my voice. Family? Your mother stole my grandmother's legacy and handed it to Paula like a birthday present. Where was your concern for family then? I didn't know, he protested. I swear, Lucia, I had no idea what Mother was planning. But you didn't stop it either, did you? You just stood there. Before he could respond, Fred appeared in the doorway. Lucia, that reporter from the wellness blog is here for your interview. I'll be right there. I turned back to Tyler. If that's all. It's not. He pulled out his phone and pulled up a news article. Curtis Douglas is talking to the press. He's planning to blame the whole thing on Paula, paint her as a naive rich girl who got in over her head. Mother's letting it happen. That gave me pause. Paula might be spoiled, but she didn't deserve to take the fall for Meredith's schemes. The board meeting is next week, Tyler continued. They're going to vote on dissolving Hanson Beauty completely. Mother will probably survive it, but Paula? He shook his head. Her reputation will never recover. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one who can fix this. He met my eyes. And because despite what you think, I do love you. I miss you. Fred cleared his throat. Reporter's waiting. Tell her I'll be there in 5 minutes. I waited until Fred left before addressing Tyler. I can't help you. Can't? Or won't? Does it matter? Your mother made her choice. And now I'm making mine. He stepped closer. I'm backing your version of events at the board meeting. All of it. Mother will probably never speak to me again, but it's the right thing to do. I stared at him, searching for any sign of deception. Why now? Because watching you build this, he gestured around the shop, reminded me why I fell in love with you. Your passion, your integrity, everything Mother tried to dismiss as common. Through the open door, I could hear the buzz of customers, the gentle music we played, the soft clink of sample bottles. My shop, my dream, built exactly how I wanted it. The reporter's waiting, I said finally. Lucia. But, I cut him off. Have Paula call me, directly, not through you or your mother. Hope flickered across his face. You'll talk to her? I'll listen. That's all I'm promising. He nodded, then hesitated before leaning in to kiss my cheek. I really am sorry, he whispered. I watched him leave through the back door, then took a moment to compose myself before heading out to meet the reporter. Fred caught my eye questioningly. Paula might be calling, I told him. And maybe it's time we heard her side of the story. Fred looked skeptical, but nodded. Your call, but remember, we're finally winning. I touched one of our display bottles, remembering Aurora's words about strength and respect. Sometimes winning isn't about destroying your opponent, Fred. Sometimes it's about teaching them a better way. Just be careful, he warned. The Hansons aren't as powerful as they think they are. I finished. Trust me, I know exactly what I'm doing. But as I walked toward the waiting reporter, I wondered if that was really true. Was I opening myself up to another betrayal? Or was this the opportunity I'd been waiting for to set things right? On my terms? Paula looked nothing like her usual polished self when she slipped into the back of my grandmother's cafe 3 days later. Her designer clothes had been replaced by yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her perfect hair pulled back in a messy bun. I wasn't sure you'd come, I said, sliding a cup of Aurora's special tea across the table. I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet. She wrapped her hands around the cup but didn't drink. The press is camped outside my apartment. They're calling me a fraud. Aren't you? She flinched. I deserve that. You deserve worse. I know. She finally met my eyes. Mother said it would be simple. Just put my name on the brand, be the face of the company. I never thought what? That stealing someone's life work might have consequences? That people would get hurt? Tears welled in her eyes. Those reaction reports, those are real people, Lucia. And now Curtis is trying to pin everything on me, saying I rushed production without proper testing. I leaned back, studying her. But you didn't, did you? That was Meredith. Paula nodded miserably. Mother handles all the business decisions. Always has. She gestured vaguely. Show up and smile. And take credit for other people's work. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am so sorry. The cafe door chimed, and Aurora emerged from the kitchen, carrying a plate of her famous honey cookies. She set them down without a word and fixed Paula with a penetrating stare. These cookies, Aurora said finally, require exactly 17 minutes to bake. Not 16, not 18, 17. Do you know why? Paula blinked in confusion. No, because that's how long it takes for the honey to caramelize perfectly without burning. You cannot rush it. You cannot fake it. Nature has its own timeline. She turned to me. Just like your skincare formulas, yes? I nodded, understanding where she was going. The ingredients need proper time to blend, to mature. You can't mass-produce that process without compromising quality. But surely there must be a way to scale up production, Paula protested. The demand is there. There is, I agreed, but not the way Meredith did it. Not by cutting corners and substituting inferior ingredients. Aurora patted Paula's hand. You are not your mother, child, but you must decide who you want to be. Paula's phone buzzed. Meredith's face flashed on the screen. She declined the call with trembling fingers. The board meeting is tomorrow, she said. Curtis has already submitted his statement blaming me for everything. Mother hasn't even tried to defend me. And Tyler? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He's presenting evidence that the original formulas were yours. She managed a weak smile. I think he's finally standing up to Mother. Too late for damage control, though. I exchanged a look with Aurora, who nodded slightly. Maybe not. Paula's head snapped up. What do you mean? I could help fix this mess, but my terms would be non-negotiable. Anything, she said quickly. Name it. First, a public confession. The whole truth about where the formulas came from and who was really making the decisions. She paled but nodded. And? Second, complete creative control returns to me. Any future collaboration happens under my brand, my rules. Mother will never agree. Then she can watch her company collapse under FDA investigations and lawsuits. I stood up. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Paula stared at her untouched tea. She'll disown me. Probably, Aurora said gently, but perhaps it's time to own your own life, yes? Paula's phone buzzed again. Another call from Meredith. This time, she turned the phone off completely. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. All of it. Write it down, I instructed, pushing a notepad toward her. Everything. From the beginning. We'll need it for tomorrow. As Paula began writing, Aurora pulled me aside. Are you sure about this, mija? Helping them after everything? I watched Paula's shoulders shake as she documented her mother's deception. I'm not doing it for Meredith. Sometimes the best revenge is forcing people to face their own truth. And Tyler? That's complicated. Aurora squeezed my hand. Life usually is, but you're handling it with grace. Paula looked up from her writing, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted to hurt anyone, she said. I just wanted Mother to be proud of me. I know, I replied, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. But tomorrow, you have a chance to make yourself proud instead. She nodded and returned to writing, while I began drafting the statement that would either save or destroy the Hanson family's reputation. Either way, by this time tomorrow, everything would change. The Hanson corporate boardroom felt colder than I remembered. I sat between Fred and Tyler, watching Meredith's face as she read Paula's written confession. Her perfectly manicured fingers crumpled the edges of the paper. This is ridiculous, she finally spat, throwing the pages across the table. Paula is clearly under duress. I'm not, Paula said quietly from her seat. She looked small in her formal blazer, but her voice was steady. Every word is true, Mother. Curtis Douglas cleared his throat. The board needs to consider the legal implications. If what Paula's saying is correct, it's not, Meredith cut in. This is obviously some ploy by Lucia to... To what? Tyler interrupted. To expose the truth? I have copies of all Lucia's original documentation, including security footage showing you accessing her office after hours. The board members murmured amongst themselves. I caught fragments of their whispered conversation. FDA investigation. Stock price falling. Public relations nightmare. Meredith's smile turned razor sharp. Lucia, dear, surely we can discuss this privately, as family? Like how we discussed stealing my formulas? I pulled out my laptop. I have a proposition for the board, one that could salvage this situation. The board doesn't need... I think we'd like to hear it, the chairwoman interjected, silencing Meredith with a look. I opened my presentation. My brand has been growing steadily, with zero adverse reactions and excellent customer retention. I'm prepared to enter into a partnership with Hansen Corp, but only under specific conditions. Which are? Curtis leaned forward, suddenly interested. First, full creative control returns to me. Second, Paula stays on as brand ambassador, but only after she makes a public statement explaining exactly what happened. Absolutely not! Meredith slammed her hand on the table. Paula, tell them you won't. I already agreed, Paula said. Her voice cracked, but she continued. I'm tired of lying, Mother. Tired of pretending. Pretending what? Meredith scoffed. That I'm happy, that I wanted any of this. Paula stood up, tears streaming down her face. Do you know why I never launched my own business? Because you convinced me I wasn't capable of anything except being pretty and following orders. The boardroom fell silent. Even Curtis looked uncomfortable. Everything I've ever done, Paula continued, was to make you proud. But it's never enough, is it? And now you're letting me take the fall for your decisions. I was protecting our family name, Meredith hissed. By destroying mine? Paula laughed bitterly. I'm pregnant, Mother. 5 months. I've been hiding it because I knew you'd see it as another failure. The revelation hit the room like a thunderbolt. I saw Tyler's jaw drop. Clearly, this was news to him, too. That's why I agreed to be the face of this company. Paula wiped her eyes. One last chance to prove my worth before you found out. But I can't. I won't let my child grow up watching me lie and steal and hurt people just to earn your approval. Meredith's face had gone chalk white. You're pregnant? Who? Does it matter? You'll probably just try to control that, too. I cleared my throat. The offer stands. Paula makes the statement. I take creative control, and we rebuild the brand properly, together. Otherwise, I release everything to the press. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. Mrs. Hansen, given the circumstances, I strongly suggest... Fine. Meredith's voice could have frozen hell. Do whatever you want. You've already turned my daughter against me. No, Mother, Paula said softly. You did that yourself. Tyler reached for my hand under the table. I let him take it, feeling the familiar warmth of his palm against mine. I'll have legal draw up the paperwork, the chairwoman announced. In the meantime, I believe we should suspend all current Hansen Beauty operations pending the restructuring. As the board members filed out, Meredith remained seated, staring at nothing. For the first time, I saw her as she really was, not an untouchable society queen, but a woman who'd sacrificed everything, including her daughter's love, for control. Paula touched my arm. Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. Don't thank me yet, I warned. The hard part's still coming. I know, but at least it'll be honest. She gathered her things, pausing at the door. Mother, I have an ultrasound appointment next week. You're welcome to come, if you want. Meredith didn't respond. Paula left quietly, leaving me alone with Tyler and his mother. Well, Tyler said, standing, I suppose we should... You'll regret this, Meredith said suddenly, looking directly at me. All of you? I met her gaze steadily. No, Meredith. The only regret here is that you never understood the difference between power and strength. Taking Tyler's arm, I walked out of the boardroom, leaving Meredith alone with the scattered pages of her daughter's confession. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, the truth was finally out. And sometimes, that's the strongest revenge of all. Deep breaths, I coached Paula as the makeup artist made final touches. Remember, just tell the truth. We were backstage at a major morning show, minutes away from the interview that would either save or destroy both our reputations. Paula's baby bump was now visible in her simple navy dress. She'd insisted on showing it, tired of hiding. "What if I freeze?" she whispered. "What if—" "Then I'll be right there beside you." I checked my own appearance in the mirror. Just like we practiced. Tyler appeared with 3 water bottles. 5 minutes to air. Mother's in the green room. She actually came? Paula's eyes widened. Probably to make sure we don't completely destroy the family name, I muttered. The producer stuck her head in. "Ladies, we're ready for you." The studio lights were blinding as we took our seats across from the host, Sarah, who was known for her tough interviews. My palms were sweating, but I kept my expression calm. This morning we're joined by Paula Hansen and Lucia Lynch to discuss the recent controversy surrounding Hansen Beauty, Sarah began. Paula, let's start with you. There have been serious allegations about the origin of your skincare line. Paula gripped her water bottle. Yes, and they're true. All of them. Her voice shook slightly. The formulas were stolen from Lucia, my sister-in-law. She developed them based on her grandmother's traditional recipes. That's a serious admission? Sarah leaned forward. Why come clean now? Because I'm about to become a mother myself. Paula rested a hand on her bump. And I want my child to be proud of me. Real pride, not the kind that comes from stealing and lying. From the corner of my eye, I saw Meredith shift in her seat in the green room. Lucia, Sarah turned to me. These formulas were your family's legacy. How do you feel sitting here now? Honestly, I'm proud of Paula for telling the truth. It takes courage to admit when you've been wrong. But you're not just here to clear the air, are you? I understand there's a new business arrangement. Yes, I smiled. We're relaunching the line under my direction, with Paula as brand ambassador. But this time, we're doing it right. Ethical sourcing, proper production methods, no shortcuts. And the adverse reactions customers reported were the result of rushed production and substituted ingredients, Paula cut in. That was my mother's decision, not Lucia's formula. I should have spoken up then, but I was too afraid. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Afraid of what? Paula took a deep breath. Of disappointing my mother, of losing my place in the family. But I've realized there are worse things than disappointment, like looking in the mirror and not recognizing yourself anymore. In the green room, Meredith stood up abruptly. For a moment, I thought she might storm the set, but instead, she walked out. What would you say to customers who trusted Hansen Beauty? Sarah pressed. I'm sorry, Paula's voice cracked. We betrayed your trust, but Lucia's giving me a chance to make it right, to be part of something authentic. The new line will honor her grandmother's legacy while creating my own. Speaking of which, Sarah smiled, I understand you brought samples of the rebranded products? I reached under my chair for the gift bags. Yes, these are from our first official collaboration. Each bottle includes both our stories, the truth about where these formulas came from and where they're going. As we demonstrated the products, I watched Paula explain the ingredients with genuine enthusiasm. She'd spent weeks learning everything about the process, determined to earn her place this time. After the segment, Tyler met us backstage. That was incredible, both of you. Mother left. Paula said quietly. I know, but that's her loss. He hugged his sister. I'm proud of you, Paula, and I can't wait to be an uncle. Fred appeared with his tablet. Orders are already coming in. The website's crashing from traffic. And the comments? I asked. Overwhelmingly positive. People love a redemption story, especially an honest one. Paula touched my arm. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for being brave enough to take it. Ladies, the producer called. People magazine is here for your photo shoot. As we headed to the next interview, I received a text from Aurora. Watch the show. You both did good, Mika. Sometimes the strongest seeds grow from broken ground. I showed the message to Paula, who smiled through her tears. Your grandmother is very wise. She is, and she's excited to teach you the proper way to harvest calendula. Really? Even after everything? Family isn't just about blood, Paula. It's about choices. You made the right one today. We paused outside the photo studio, where journalists were already gathering. Paula squared her shoulders, one hand protectively over her bump. Ready? I asked. She nodded. Ready to start over, the right way this time. Together, we pushed open the doors, stepping into the bright lights of our new beginning. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about transforming them into allies. The lavender needs to be harvested before sunrise, I explained to Paula as we walked through the organic farm that supplied our ingredients. 3 months had passed since the television confession, and our rebranded line was thriving. The essential oil content is highest then. Paula, now visibly pregnant, touched a purple stem gently. Mother always said getting your hands dirty was beneath us. Speaking of Meredith, I hesitated. Have you heard from her? Not since the interview. Tyler says she's in Switzerland, recovering from the scandal. Paula made air quotes with her fingers. At least Curtis finally backed off after the legal team got involved. A familiar car pulled up to the farm's entrance. Tyler, carrying coffee and breakfast. He'd been staying at my grandmother's guest house while we figured out our marriage, taking things slow. Morning, ladies, he called out, balancing a tray of cups. Aurora sent muffins. Your grandmother's been feeding me constantly, Paula laughed. She says the baby needs proper nourishment, not those silly diet foods I used to eat. She's right, I smiled, accepting a coffee from Tyler. Speaking of the baby, how was the doctor's appointment? Paula's face lit up. It's a girl. I'm having a daughter. Tyler hugged his sister. That's wonderful. Have you thought about names? Actually, Paula looked at me nervously. I was thinking of Aurora, if that's okay. I nearly dropped my coffee. You want to name her after my grandmother? She's shown me more maternal kindness in 3 months than Mother has in 30 years. Plus, Paula stroked her belly, I want my daughter to have a strong name, one that represents healing and new beginnings. Before I could respond, Fred's truck came barreling down the dirt road, kicking up dust. Turn on your phones, he shouted, jumping out. Meredith just went on live with Regina Ford. Regina Ford was the most watched morning show host in the country. We huddled around Fred's tablet, watching the stream. Meredith sat primly in a designer suit, looking perfectly composed. I've come to set the record straight about my daughter's performance 3 months ago. Oh, God, Paula whispered. Paula was under tremendous stress, Meredith continued smoothly. The pregnancy hormones, the pressure of running a company. She became confused about certain events. Regina leaned forward. Are you saying her confession was false? I'm saying she was manipulated by Lucia, my daughter-in-law, who saw an opportunity to take control of our family business. Tyler swore under his breath. Mother, what are you doing? But the documentation, Regina pressed. The security footage. Easily manipulated, Meredith waved dismissively. The truth is, Hanson Beauty was always a family enterprise. Lucia simply couldn't accept that she wasn't the center of attention. My phone started buzzing with notifications. The stock market was reacting, our share price fluctuating wildly. We have to respond, Fred said urgently. Right now. Paula straightened up, her face set. Yes, we do. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Regina's producer? This is Paula Hanson. I need to go live, immediately. 20 minutes later, we were watching Paula on the same show, facing her mother via split screen. Mother, Paula's voice was steady. Stop lying. Darling, you're not well? I'm perfectly well. In fact, I'm healthier than I've ever been. Paula held up one of our products. This is the truth. Every ingredient, every formula. Lucia's grandmother taught me how to make it properly, with respect for the process and the plants. Paula, I'm naming my daughter Aurora, Paula continued, after the woman who showed me what real maternal love looks like, who taught me that success built on lies isn't success at all. Meredith's perfect mask cracked slightly. You're choosing them over your own mother? No, Mother, I'm choosing truth over lies, pride over shame, love over fear. Paula took a deep breath. And if you ever want to meet your granddaughter, you'll need to do the same. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Meredith disconnected without another word. Regina turned to Paula. That was incredibly powerful. It was necessary, Paula replied simply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to work. We're harvesting lavender this morning. When the segment ended, Paula collapsed into Tyler's arms, shaking. Did I just do that? You did, he confirmed, holding her tight. And it was amazing. Fred was checking his phone. Social media's exploding. Support messages are pouring in. The stock's stabilizing. I touched Paula's shoulder. You okay? She wiped her eyes, managing a smile. You know what? I actually am. For the first time in my life, I feel free. The sun was rising over the lavender field, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Aurora would be waiting at the farmhouse with breakfast and wisdom, ready to teach us more about the plants and life itself. Come on, I said, picking up my harvesting basket. The lavender's waiting, and this time we're doing it right. Together, we walked into the field, leaving Meredith's lies behind us like morning mist burning away in the sun. She's perfect, I whispered, cradling baby Aurora in the hospital room while Paula rested. The newborn's tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb with surprising strength. Tyler leaned over my shoulder, gently touching his niece's dark curls. She looks just like Paula did as a baby. A soft knock at the door made us turn. My grandmother Aurora stood there, arms full of fresh flowers and homemade food. Behind her, surprisingly, was Meredith. The room fell silent. Paula stirred, opening her eyes. Mother? Meredith looked smaller somehow, less polished than usual. She carried a simple white gift bag. I saw the birth announcement in the society pages. You mean you saw it 6 hours ago when I was in labor? Paula's voice was tired but sharp. And you're just showing up now? Meredith faltered. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome. That depends, Paula said. Are you here as the woman who tried to destroy our business last month, or as a grandmother? Meredith's carefully composed expression cracked. I brought something. She pulled out an old, worn baby blanket from the gift bag. This was yours. I kept it all these years. Paula's eyes filled with tears. My butterfly blanket? I thought you threw it away when I turned 10. You said it wasn't sophisticated enough. I couldn't. Meredith's voice wavered. It was the last thing you loved before I started, before I made you think love had to be earned. I stood up, still holding baby Aurora. would you like to hold your granddaughter? Meredith looked startled, then hesitant. I should probably go. Mother, Paula interrupted. Stay, please. As I placed the baby in Meredith's arms, my grandmother stepped forward. The blanket needs washing first, she said practically. I'll show you how to do it properly, with gentle herbs, for the baby's sensitive skin. Meredith looked up sharply, perhaps expecting judgment, but Aurora's face showed only kindness. I'd like that, Meredith said softly. Tyler squeezed my hand as we watched the 3 generations of women gather around the baby. Think there's hope? He whispered. There's always hope, I replied. Sometimes it just needs time to bloom. Fred burst in, barely containing his excitement. Sorry to interrupt, but you all need to see this. He held up his tablet, showing the latest market reports. Our skincare line had just been picked up by a major international retailer, with the condition that we maintain our ethical production methods and family-centered approach. They love our story, Fred explained. The authenticity, the reconciliation, the traditional methods. They want us to develop an entire legacy collection. Paula laughed. Mother, remember how you said small batch production would never scale? I was wrong about many things, Meredith admitted, still cradling the baby. Perhaps you could show me how it's done properly? My grandmother touched Meredith's shoulder. First lesson, everything worthwhile takes time. Babies, healing, even face cream. Speaking of face cream, I added, we're harvesting roses tomorrow at dawn. The whole family is welcome. Dawn? Meredith looked horrified, then caught herself. I suppose I could try it. Once. Wear comfortable shoes, Paula advised with a grin. And prepare to get dirty. Baby Aurora chose that moment to cry, and we all watched as Meredith instinctively began to sway, humming softly. It was the most human I'd ever seen her. You know, Tyler said quietly, the Legacy Collection needs a proper launch event. No more ballrooms, I warned. No more pretense. I was thinking the farm, he suggested. Under the stars, surrounded by the herbs and flowers that make everything possible. With Aurora's honey cookies, Paula added. And my organic tea, my grandmother chimed in. Meredith looked around the room, then down at her granddaughter. And perhaps I could share some stories about Paula as a baby, the real ones, not the society column versions. I'd like that, Paula smiled, all of it. As if in agreement, baby Aurora cooed, reaching up toward the window where the morning sun was streaming in. Outside, the hospital garden bloomed with the same herbs we used in our products, nature's reminder that growth was always possible. Well then, I said, pulling out my phone to start planning. Let's create something beautiful, together. Tyler kissed my cheek. Together sounds perfect. I looked around the room, at Paula's tired but happy face, at Meredith's tentative steps toward change, at my grandmother's knowing smile, at Fred's excited business plans, at Tyler's loving support, and at little Aurora, who represented all our hopes for the future. This was better than revenge, better than winning. This was family, messy and real and healing, like the gardens we tended and the products we created. Not perfect, but authentic. Not flawless, but growing. And tomorrow at dawn, we'd all be in the fields together, harvesting roses and new beginnings, writing our legacy one genuine moment at a time.
The letter sat on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. 5 years of carefully reconstructed peace, threatened by a single cream envelope with Rachel's unmistakable handwriting. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Memories flooding back of that day in the hospital when I lost everything. I'm Naomi, and until that day, I thought I had it all. A loving husband, a best friend who was more like a sister, and a baby girl growing inside me. Now all I have is a nursing degree and a collection of what-ifs. You should burn it, my brother Adrian said, reaching for his coffee. He'd stopped by for our weekly breakfast, a tradition that helped keep me sane after everything fell apart. I probably should. I turned the envelope over in my hands. But you know me. Yeah, I do, which is exactly why you should burn it. He leaned forward, his expression serious. You've worked too hard to let them back in. The memory of that day still burns fresh. I was 7 months pregnant when severe complications sent me to the emergency room. While I fought for my baby's life, my husband John was nowhere to be found. Hours later, as I lay devastated by the loss, a nurse accidentally let slip that my emergency contact, my best friend Rachel, had been admitted to the same hospital for a panic attack. She was in the room right next to mine. They were together, weren't they? I'd asked the nurse, already knowing the answer. Her pitying look said everything. Naomi? Adrian's voice pulled me back to the present. You're doing it again. Sorry. I picked up my toast, now cold. I want to know what she could possibly have to say after all this time. Nothing worth hearing, I bet. I ripped open the envelope, ignoring Adrian's sigh. The letter inside was short, but every word felt like a punch to the gut. Dear Naomi, I know we have no right to ask anything of you, but John and I need your help. We've been trying to have a baby for 3 years with no success. The doctors say I can't carry to term. You're our last hope. Please, just meet with us. We can explain everything. Rachel. You've got to be kidding me. Adrian grabbed the letter, reading it himself. The nerve of these people. I stood up, pacing my small kitchen. They want me to be their surrogate? After everything? Tell me you're not actually considering this. I stopped at my window, staring at the hospital where I now worked as a labor and delivery nurse. Every day I helped bring new life into the world, while my own chance at motherhood had been stolen from me. Of course not, I said, but something stirred inside me, an idea, dark and tempting. My phone buzzed, a text from my colleague Sadie. Emergency at work, can you cover for me? I have to go, I told Adrian, grateful for the escape. Early shift. He stood, gathering his things. Promise me you'll throw that letter away. Promise, I lied, tucking it into my scrub pocket. At work, between checking on patients, I couldn't stop thinking about Rachel's request. 5 years ago, I'd been too broken to fight back. I'd signed the divorce papers in a daze, moved across town, and threw myself into nursing school. I'd done everything right, rebuilt my life, found purpose in my work, even started dating again. But the wound never really healed. You look like you've seen a ghost, Sadie said during our break. Everything okay? I pulled out the letter, watching her eyes widen as she read it. Holy shit, she whispered. What are you going to do? I took the letter back, smoothing its creases. I think I'm going to help them. What? Are you insane? Maybe I was. But for the first time in 5 years, I felt truly alive. They want a baby so badly? Fine, I'll give them exactly what they want. Naomi, Sadie's voice held a warning. Don't worry, I said, pulling out my phone to compose a reply. I know exactly what I'm doing. My fingers moved swiftly across the screen. Dear Rachel, I'm surprised to hear from you. You're right, we should meet. There's a lot to discuss. How's tomorrow at 2? The response came almost immediately. Thank you, Naomi. You don't know what this means to us. I smiled, tucking my phone away. They had no idea what they were walking into. 5 years ago, they'd destroyed my life when I was at my most vulnerable. Now they were the vulnerable ones, desperate for my help. The perfect chance to make them understand exactly what they'd done to me. I don't like that look in your eyes, Sadie said softly. Don't worry, I repeated, standing up as my break ended. Everything's going to be just fine. But as I walked back to my patients, my hand drifted to my flat stomach, remembering the daughter I'd lost. Tomorrow, I'd face the 2 people who had betrayed me at my lowest point, and this time, I'd be the one in control. The coffee shop felt too small as I watched them walk in. John still had that confident stride, though his hair had started graying at the temples. Rachel looked thinner than I remembered, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frame. They spotted me in the corner booth, and I could see Rachel's steps falter. "Naomi," John said, his voice softer than I expected. "Thank you for meeting us." I gestured to the seats across from me, keeping my face neutral. "Please, sit." They settled in awkwardly, Rachel's hands fidgeting with her purse strap. The silence stretched until our server arrived to take their orders. "Just water," Rachel said quickly. John ordered black coffee. "So," I said once we were alone again, "you want me to carry your baby?" Rachel flinched at my directness. "We've tried everything," she whispered. "Multiple IVF cycles, different specialists. My body just... it keeps rejecting." "We understand this is a huge ask," John cut in, reaching for Rachel's trembling hand. The gesture made my stomach turn, especially given our history. I took a slow sip of my tea. Our history. That's an interesting way to put it. "Naomi, please," Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I know we can never make up for what we did, but we've changed. We've grown." "Have you?" I leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're still the same selfish people who left me alone in that hospital room while my daughter died." John's face paled. "We never meant..." "Never meant what? To fall in love while I was carrying your child? To start your affair behind my back? To abandon me when I needed you most?" "It wasn't like that," Rachel protested weakly. "Then tell me what it was like. Help me understand why my husband and best friend thought it was okay to destroy me." The server returned with their drinks, creating another uncomfortable pause. I watched them squirm, savoring their discomfort. "We were wrong," John said finally. "Terribly, unforgivably wrong. If we could go back..." "But you can't," I interrupted. "And now you want my help." The irony is almost poetic. Rachel wiped her eyes. "We've been to every fertility clinic in the state. None of the other surrogates worked out. You're our last hope, Naomi. Please." I sat back, studying them. Rachel looked desperate, haunted. John couldn't meet my eyes. Perfect. "I'll do it," I said. They both stared at me, shocked. "What?" Rachel breathed. "I'll be your surrogate, under certain conditions." "Anything," John said quickly. "First, we do this through proper legal channels. My lawyer draws up the contract, not yours." They nodded eagerly. "Second, I want full transparency about everything. Medical records, genetic testing, all of it. No secrets." "Of course," Rachel agreed. "And third," I paused, making sure I had their complete attention, "you both agree to weekly counseling sessions, together and separately." John frowned. "Counseling?" "You want me to carry your child. I need to know you're both mentally prepared for parenthood, that you've dealt with your issues." Rachel grabbed John's arm before he could protest. "We'll do it, whatever you want." I pulled out my lawyer's card, sliding it across the table. "Call Tobias. He'll handle the paperwork. Once everything's signed, we can start the medical procedures." They stood, Rachel looking like she might hug me. I stepped back quickly. "This is just business," I said coldly. "Don't mistake it for forgiveness." After they left, I remained in the booth, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone to text Adrian. They agreed. Everything's set. His response was immediate. "You're playing with fire, sis." Maybe I was. But watching their desperate faces, seeing how badly they wanted this baby, I knew I'd made the right choice. They'd taken everything from me 5 years ago. Now it was my turn to show them exactly how that felt. Back at work that evening, Sadie cornered me in the break room. "Well," she demanded, "how did it go?" "They agreed to everything, even the counseling." She shook her head. "I still think you're crazy. What happens when they figure out what you're really doing?" I smiled, thinking of Rachel's tears, John's guilt-ridden face. "They won't. They're too desperate for this baby to question anything." "And what about you?" Sadie asked softly. "Are you ready to carry another child? To go through all that again?" The question hit harder than I expected. I turned away, organizing supplies to hide my expression. "I'm not doing this to have a baby," I said firmly. I'm doing this to make them understand what they did to me. And then what? I closed the supply cabinet with more force than necessary, and then I'll finally be able to move on. But as I headed home that night, past the nursery wing where newborns cried and parents celebrated, I wondered if I was lying to myself. Was this really about revenge? Or was I chasing something else? Something I'd lost 5 years ago in a hospital room, alone and betrayed. Tomorrow I'd meet with Tobias to start the legal process. There would be no turning back after that. No room for doubt or second thoughts. They wanted my help? Fine. They'd get exactly what they deserved. The fertility clinic's waiting room was eerily quiet as I sat between John and Rachel, waiting for our first appointment. 2 months of legal paperwork and preliminary tests had led to this moment. Rachel's leg bounced nervously, while John stared at his phone, his jaw tense. "Mrs. Clark?" the nurse called, and Rachel jumped. "That's still weird to hear," I muttered, loud enough for them both to catch it. Rachel's face flushed red. The nurse led us to Dr. Patterson's office, her walls covered with photos of smiling babies. Rachel gravitated toward them immediately, touching one frame with trembling fingers. "Good morning," Dr. Patterson breezed in, her smile professional. "I've reviewed all your files. Shall we discuss the procedure?" As she explained the IVF process, I watched John and Rachel from the corner of my eye. They weren't sitting as close as they had been at the coffee shop. Rachel kept reaching for John's hand, but he remained stiff, distant. "Any questions?" Dr. Patterson asked. "I have one," I said. "I'd like to see Rachel's complete medical history." Rachel's head snapped up. "You already have my records." "The basics, yes, but I want everything. Every test, every failed attempt, every diagnosis." "That's not," John started, but Rachel cut him off. "It's fine. I'll have everything sent over." Dr. Patterson cleared her throat. "Well, if we're all comfortable proceeding, we can schedule the first hormone treatment for next week." In the parking lot afterward, Rachel caught my arm. "Naomi, wait. Can we talk?" John was already in their car, engine running. "What is it?" She hugged herself, looking small. "Thank you for doing this. I know you must hate us." "Hate requires emotional investment," I said coldly. "I feel nothing for either of you." Her face crumpled, but she pressed on. "John's been different lately. Distant, I think he feels guilty about everything." "Good. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. "Harder? Like watching my husband comfort my best friend while my baby died wasn't hard enough? That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you two showing up after 5 years, asking me to give you the one thing you took from me." John honked the horn, making us both jump. Rachel wiped her eyes and hurried to the car. I watched them drive away, noting how they sat as far apart as the seats allowed. Back at work, I slipped into the records room during my break. Rachel's medical files had arrived, and I began scanning through them, looking for anything unusual. "What are you doing?" Sadie's voice made me jump. "Research," I said, not looking up. She peered over my shoulder. "Those are private records. I'm their surrogate. I have a right to know." "Know what exactly?" She pulled up a chair. "That they're having marriage troubles? Because that's pretty obvious from what you've told me." I flipped through another page, then stopped. "Wait. Look at this." The report detailed Rachel's third failed pregnancy, but something in the genetic testing caught my eye. "This can't be right," I muttered, reading it again. "What?" "According to this, Rachel has a genetic condition that makes pregnancy dangerous for both her and the baby. But they never mentioned this." Sadie frowned. "Maybe they don't know?" "No, look at the date. This was from last year. They know, and they're hiding it from me." "But why would they?" "Because it might affect my decision," I said, anger building. "They're still lying, still keeping secrets." I pulled out my phone, typing furiously, "Emergency meeting. Tomorrow morning, your house. No excuses." Rachel's response came quickly. "Is everything okay? We'll discuss it tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Rachel's face in the parking lot, about John's distance. Something wasn't adding up. Adrian called around midnight. You're still awake, aren't you? How did you know? Because I know you. What's going on? I told him about the medical records, about John and Rachel's strange behavior. Maybe you should back out, he suggested. This seems messier than we thought. No, I said firmly. This is exactly what I needed. Proof that they haven't changed. They're still the same selfish, lying people they were 5 years ago. And you're sure this is about them? Not about you trying to replace what you lost? I hung up on him. The next morning, as I drove to their house, my mind raced with possibilities. Why hide the genetic condition? What else were they keeping from me? The perfect revenge I'd planned was becoming complicated, layers of secrets threatening to suffocate us all. Their house looked exactly like the kind of place I'd once dreamed of living in, perfectly manicured lawn, white picket fence, window boxes full of flowers. But as I parked in their driveway, I could hear shouting from inside. You never wanted this! Rachel's voice, shrill and breaking. You're only doing this because you feel guilty. That's not true, John shouted back. I smiled grimly as I walked to their door. Time to add some fuel to this fire. The shouting stopped the moment I rang the doorbell. Rachel opened it, her eyes red and puffy, trying to force a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Naomi, come in. Would you like some tea? Their living room was a shrine to forced perfection. Matching furniture, artfully arranged throw pillows, family photos where they both smiled too widely. John stood by the window, his back to us. No tea, I said, pulling the medical report from my bag. Let's talk about this instead. Rachel's face went pale as she recognized the document. Where did you get that? You agreed to full transparency, remember? I placed it on their coffee table. Want to explain why you hid this? John turned around finally. Hid what? She doesn't know, Rachel whispered, and suddenly everything clicked into place. I looked between them. You never told him about the genetic condition? The silence that followed was deafening. John crossed the room in 3 quick strides, snatching up the report. What genetic condition? His voice was dangerously quiet as he read. Rachel, what is this? Rachel sank onto the couch, her perfect facade crumbling. I was going to tell you. When? John exploded. After we got Naomi pregnant with a baby that could inherit this? Were you ever going to tell me the real reason you can't carry to term? I was scared, Rachel sobbed. You've been so distant, so reluctant about this whole thing. I thought if you knew... If I knew what? That you've been lying to me? That you're willing to risk someone else's health to get what you want? I watched them unravel, feeling a twisted satisfaction. But something else crept in, too. An unexpected pang of empathy as Rachel curled into herself, looking smaller by the second. Stop, I said, surprising myself. Both of you, just stop. They turned to me as if suddenly remembering I was there. Rachel, what you did was wrong. Hiding this information put me at risk. I took a deep breath. But I think I understand why you did it. You do? Rachel looked up, hope flickering across her tear-stained face. You're terrified of losing him, I said softly. Just like I was. John made a choked sound and sat heavily in an armchair. The counseling sessions, I continued. Have you been going? Rachel nodded. Separately. John wouldn't do the couples sessions. Because this isn't what I want, John burst out. Any of it. I'm only doing this because I owe you, Rachel. Because I destroyed my marriage, hurt Naomi, all for you. And now I find out you've been lying too? The room fell silent, except for Rachel's quiet sobs. I stood there, my carefully crafted revenge plan crumbling around me. These weren't the same people who had betrayed me 5 years ago. They were broken, struggling, drowning in guilt and unspoken truths. I think, I said slowly, we all need to take a step back. What do you mean? Rachel asked. I mean we pause the surrogacy process. You two need to figure out if this is really what you both want, and you need to do it honestly this time. John looked at me with something like gratitude. Naomi, I'm so sorry. For everything. Don't, I held up my hand. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I won't be part of creating a child that's born into lies. I've seen what that does to people. My phone buzzed. A text from Sadie. Everything okay? Need backup? I typed back quickly. No, things just got complicated. What happens now? Rachel asked, her voice small. Now you tell me the whole truth. About the condition, about your marriage, about everything. And then we decide if moving forward makes any sense. As I drove home later that day, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I called Adrian. They're falling apart, I said when he answered. And I think I'm glad. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes. No. I don't know anymore. I pulled into my driveway. I wanted to hurt them like they hurt me, but watching them today, they're already hurting themselves worse than I ever could. Maybe that's your real revenge, Adrian suggested, making them face the truth they've been running from. I sat in my car, watching the sunset paint my small house in shades of orange and pink. 5 years ago, I'd lost everything in a single day. Now I was watching John and Rachel lose each other in slow motion, and it didn't feel as satisfying as I'd imagined. My phone lit up with a text from Rachel. Thank you for today, for making us talk. Can we meet tomorrow? Just us? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Okay, but this time, no more lies. The revenge I'd planned was slipping away, transforming into something else. Something that felt surprisingly like healing. Rachel chose a small diner on the outskirts of town for our meeting. When I arrived, she was already there, stirring her coffee absently, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. John moved out last night, she said as I slid into the booth. He's staying at a hotel. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. No, you're not, she smiled sadly. But thank you for saying it anyway. The waitress came by, and I ordered coffee. Neither of us touched the menus. I found this while he was packing. Rachel pulled an envelope from her purse. It's addressed to you. He wrote it 3 years ago but never sent it. My hands trembled as I took it. Why are you giving this to me? Because I'm tired of secrets. Read it. I opened the envelope carefully, unfolding the letter inside. Dear Naomi, it's our daughter's would-be birthday. I drove past the hospital today, thinking about how different everything should have been. Rachel's asleep upstairs, but I can't stop thinking about you, about the baby, about all the ways I failed as a husband and a father before I even had the chance to be either. The truth is, I never deserved you. You were kind and genuine, while I was a coward who took the easy way out. Rachel and we didn't plan for any of this to happen, but that's no excuse. We should have been honest. You deserved that much. I watch Rachel struggle with guilt every day, and I know we're being punished for what we did to you. Maybe that's fair. Maybe we deserve this pain. I'm sorry. I know it means nothing now, but I am so deeply sorry. John. I folded the letter carefully, my vision blurring. He writes one every year, Rachel said quietly. On her birthday, I found them all last night. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to know that we never forgot. We never moved on. What we did to you, it broke something in both of us. The waitress returned with my coffee. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, trying to steady myself. The genetic condition, I said finally. Tell me about it. Rachel's hands twisted in her lap. It's called Turner syndrome. It means any daughter I have would likely have severe health issues. That's why I keep miscarrying. My body, it knows. And you were willing to risk passing that on? I was desperate, she whispered. John's been pulling away for months. I thought if I could just give him a child. But it wouldn't fix anything. No, she agreed. It would just bring another innocent person into our mess. I took a sip of coffee, thinking about the letter in my purse. Why did you really choose me as your surrogate? Rachel looked out the window, tears sliding down her cheeks. Because I thought if you helped us create something beautiful, maybe it would make up for what we destroyed. Stupid, right? Yes, I said. But I understand desperate decisions. I was about to make one myself. She turned back to me. What do you mean? When you first asked me to be your surrogate, I agreed because I wanted revenge. I wanted to make you feel the loss I felt. Oh, Rachel's voice was small. And now? Now I realize we're all still stuck in that hospital room 5 years ago. You, me, John. We never really left. How do we leave? By telling the truth, all of it. I leaned forward. What really happened that day, Rachel? Why were you in the hospital? She paled. Naomi, please. I need to know. No more hiding. Rachel's hands shook as she picked up her coffee cup. I was pregnant too. Early stages. When I found out, I panicked. I took something to end it. But there were complications. That's why I was in the hospital. The truth hit me like a physical blow. You were pregnant with John's baby while I was carrying his child? She nodded, tears flowing freely now. I've never told anyone, not even John. The guilt, it's eating me alive. I sat back, feeling oddly hollow. All these years I'd imagined their betrayal as something passionate, romantic, but this was messier, uglier, more human. Does John know about any of this? No, Rachel whispered, and I can't tell him. It would destroy him completely. My phone buzzed. A text from John. Can we talk, please? I showed Rachel the message. Looks like he wants his own private conversation. Are you going to tell him what I just told you? I stood up, leaving money for the coffee. No, that's your truth to tell. But Rachel, you should. Secrets have a way of destroying everything they touch. As I walked to my car, I felt lighter somehow. The revenge I'd planned seemed petty now, compared to the weight of the truths we were all carrying. I texted John back. Tomorrow, your hotel. We have a lot to talk about. The game had changed. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about finally leaving that hospital room behind. The hotel lobby was quiet when I arrived. John sat in a corner armchair, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usual polished appearance was gone, replaced by wrinkled clothes and stubble. Thanks for coming, he said, standing. There's a coffee shop next door. We walked in silence, found a quiet table away from other customers. John ordered an espresso. I stuck with water. I guess Rachel gave you my letter, he said after our drinks arrived. One of them. She said there are others. He rubbed his face. One for every birthday our daughter should have had. Pathetic, right? No, I said softly. Not pathetic. I've been seeing my therapist daily since I moved out. He stared into his cup. She says I never properly grieved. For our daughter, for our marriage, for any of it. And Rachel? Rachel, he sighed heavily. I think I married her out of guilt. Like if I could make her happy, it would somehow make up for what we did to you. A barista dropped something in the kitchen, the crash making us both jump. Did it work? I asked. Nothing works. We're both just pretending, playing house while drowning in secrets. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a photo I'd taken of Rachel's medical records. Speaking of secrets, I found something else you should see. He took the phone, frowning as he read. These dates. This was before we even approached you about surrogacy. Keep reading. His face went pale. The genetic testing, the risk factors. She knew about all of this? She knew the risks, not just to her, but to any baby she might have. And she still wanted... He set the phone down carefully, his hands shaking. She was willing to risk a child's health just to keep me? People do desperate things when they're scared of losing everything. Like having an affair with their best friend's husband? His voice was bitter. Like agreeing to be a surrogate to get revenge, I countered. He looked up sharply. What? That's why I said yes, John. I wanted to make you both suffer, to give you hope, and then take it away. Oh. He was quiet for a moment. I guess we all have our secrets. The difference is, I'm telling you mine. A group of teenagers entered the coffee shop, their laughter jarring against our heavy conversation. There's something else, I said. Something Rachel told me yesterday. Don't. He held up his hand. If Rachel has more secrets, she needs to tell me herself. even if keeping quiet means you might make decisions based on incomplete information? He laughed hollowly. My whole life is based on incomplete information. At least now I know that. What are you going to do? I filed for divorce this morning. The words hung between us like smoke. Part of me, the part that had plotted revenge, should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly empty. Are you sure that's what you want? Want? He shook his head. What I want is to go back 5 years and make different choices. What I want is to be worthy of the family I could have had with you. What I want is impossible. John, no, let me finish. I've been a coward for too long. He met my eyes directly. I loved you, Naomi, really loved you, and I threw it away because I was scared of how much I loved you, of failing you, of not being enough. Rachel was safe, familiar, an escape. And now? Now I know there's no escape. We all have to face what we've done eventually. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Is he okay? I showed it to John. Tell her I'm fine, he said. Tell her I'm ready to hear whatever she needs to say. As I typed the response, John pulled out his wallet and laid some cash on the table. Thank you, he said, standing, for showing me those records, for being honest about your intentions, for everything. Where are you going? To talk to my wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, whatever she is. He paused. You know, I thought having a baby would fix everything, but we can't create new life when we're still living in death. I watched him leave, thinking about the daughter we lost, about Rachel's secret pregnancy, about all the babies that would never be. My phone buzzed again, Sadie this time. How's Operation Revenge going? I typed back. It's not. Everything's changed. Changed how? I stared at her message, thinking about John's letters, Rachel's tears, the weight of secrets finally spoken aloud. I'll tell you tomorrow, I replied. Right now I need to make a call. I scrolled to Tobias's number, my finger hovering over it. One call, and I could officially end the surrogacy agreement. End this chapter of all our lives. But first, Rachel and John needed to have one final conversation. One last truth to set us all free. The call came at 3 a.m. Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. Can you come over, please? I found them in their living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. The space between them might as well have been an ocean. Empty wine glasses sat on the coffee table alongside crumpled tissues and what looked like divorce papers. I told him, Rachel said as I entered. Everything. John's face was ashen, his hands gripping his knees. I needed you both here for this, to put everything on the table. I sat in the armchair, completing our triangle of broken people. Okay, I'm here. Start from the beginning, John said to Rachel. Tell Naomi what you told me. Rachel's hands trembled as she spoke. The affair? It started 3 months before your pregnancy, Naomi. I was John's shoulder to cry on when he panicked about becoming a father. One thing led to another, and you got pregnant, I finished. John made a sound like he'd been punched. When I found out about the baby, our baby, I was terrified. But I was going to tell you, Naomi. I swear I was. But then I took care of it, Rachel's voice was hollow. Without telling John, without telling anyone. And it went wrong. That's why I was in the hospital that day. While our daughter was dying, I said quietly, Yes. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. I've hated myself every day since then. When the doctors told me about the genetic condition later, about how I might never have a healthy baby, it felt like punishment. So you thought using me as a surrogate would fix everything? The bitterness crept back into my voice. I thought, Rachel looked at John, I thought if we could create something pure, something good. But we can't, John interrupted, because nothing built on lies can ever be pure. Silence filled the room. Outside, a car alarm went off briefly, before falling quiet. I wanted to hurt you both, I said finally. When you asked me to be your surrogate, I saw my chance for revenge. I was going to wait until you were invested, hopeful, and then take it all away. What changed? Rachel asked. I saw myself in you. The desperation, the pain, the secrets. We're all just broken people trying to fix things in the wrong ways. John stood suddenly, pacing the room. Do you know what I remember most about that day in the hospital? Not finding out about the affair, not even— His voice cracked. Not even losing our daughter. I remember the silence. How quiet everything was when it all fell apart. I remember the beeping, I said, the monitors, the doctors talking in hushed voices. I remember praying, Rachel whispered, bargaining with God. Take my baby instead of Naomi's, I said. Make me pay the price, not her. But that's not how it works, I said. We all paid the price. We're still paying it. John stopped pacing. So what do we do now? I pulled out my phone, showing them Tobias's number. First, we end this surrogacy agreement. It was wrong from the start. All of our reasons were wrong. Rachel nodded slowly. And then? Then you two figure out if your marriage can survive this much honesty, or if it should. And you? John asked. What will you do? I thought about the nursery at work, about the babies I help deliver every day. I'll keep living, keep healing. Maybe someday I'll have another chance at motherhood. But it will be on my terms, with someone who deserves my trust. I'm so sorry, Rachel sobbed. We've all been so sorry for so long. I know, I said, standing. That's why I'm going to do something I never thought I could. They both looked at me, waiting. I forgive you. The words hung in the air like a release, like the first breath after being underwater too long. Not for you, I continued. For me. Because carrying this anger, this need for revenge, it's exhausting, and I'm ready to be free. John wiped his eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just do better. Be better. Whether that's together or apart. I called Tobias on my way out, leaving them to figure out their next steps. His voicemail picked up. Tobias, it's Naomi. The surrogacy agreement. Cancel everything. I'll come by tomorrow to sign whatever I need to sign. As I drove home in the pre-dawn darkness, my phone lit up with texts from both of them. Rachel, thank you for making us face the truth. John, you deserved better. We all did. I didn't respond to either message. Some chapters need to end in silence, in the quiet acknowledgement that sometimes healing comes not from revenge, but from finally letting go. At home, I opened my window to watch the sunrise, thinking about all the babies I'd help bring into the world tomorrow. Each one a new beginning, a chance for something pure and true. And for the first time in 5 years, that thought didn't hurt. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves as I walked through the hospital garden. This had become my favorite lunch spot, a quiet place to decompress between deliveries. Today, though, I wasn't alone. I thought I might find you here, Sadie said, sitting beside me on the bench. Rough morning? Beautiful morning, actually. Twins. Both healthy, both perfect. She smiled, handing me a coffee. You seem different lately. Lighter. I am. I watched a pair of birds chase each other through the trees. Did I tell you Rachel called yesterday? No. What did she want? To let me know she's moving to Seattle. Fresh start, she said. The divorce was finalized last week. How do you feel about that? I considered the question, sipping my coffee. Honestly, I hope she finds what she's looking for. That's surprisingly generous of you. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of carrying around other people's guilt alongside my own. A young couple walked past us, the woman heavily pregnant, the man supporting her with gentle care. Once, that sight would have sent me spiraling. Now it just felt like watching life continue its natural course. Speaking of guilt, Sadie said, John dropped this off at the nurse's station for you. She handed me a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a silver frame holding a sonogram image, my daughter from all those years ago. I found this while cleaning out the house, John's note read. She deserved to be remembered, and you deserve to have this piece of her. Oh, Sadie breathed, reading over my shoulder. Are you okay? Yeah, I traced the tiny profile in the image. I really am. My phone buzzed, a message from Adrian. Dinner tonight? Big news to share. Go, Sadie said, seeing my hesitation. I'll cover your afternoon shift. You sure? Positive. Besides, you've earned some happiness of your own. At the small Italian restaurant Adrian loved, I found him practically bouncing with excitement. What's the big news? I asked, sliding into the booth. Remember that promotion I mentioned, the one in Chicago? You got it? He nodded, grinning. And I want you to come with me. What? Hear me out. The hospital there is twice the size of this one, with a state-of-the-art maternity ward. They're always looking for experienced nurses. Adrian, you need this, sis. A fresh start. Somewhere without ghosts around every corner. I opened my mouth to refuse automatically, but stopped. What was really keeping me here? I'll think about it, I said instead. That's all I'm asking. Later that night, I sat in my garden looking at the stars. The frame from John sat in my lap, my daughter's image silvery in the moonlight. My phone lit up with a text from Rachel. Found this while packing. Thought you should have it. The attached photo showed 3 young women laughing at a beach. Rachel, me, and our friend Kate from college. We looked so carefree, so unaware of how life would change us all. Remember who we were, Rachel's next message read. But more importantly, remember who we can still become. I looked at the sonogram again, thinking about Chicago, about fresh starts and new beginnings. I'm sorry I tried to use your memory for revenge, I whispered to the image. You deserved better than that. We all did. My phone buzzed one more time, an email from the hospital administrator. Naomi, heard you might be considering a move. Before you decide, I'd like to discuss promoting you to head nurse of labor and delivery. You've earned it. Let's talk tomorrow. I smiled, thinking about how life had a way of opening doors just when you thought all paths were closed. Inside, I placed the frame on my mantel, next to the photo of my nursing school graduation. Not hidden away like a painful secret, but displayed as part of my story. A chapter that helped shape me, but no longer defined me. I typed 3 messages. To Adrian, let's talk more about Chicago tomorrow. To Rachel, safe travels. I hope you find your peace. To John, thank you for the frame. She'll always be part of both of us. Then I walked through my house, really seeing it for the first time in years. Not as a refuge from pain, but as a space full of possibilities. Whether I stayed or left, chose Chicago or the promotion, the decision would be about moving forward, not running away. My revenge plan had failed spectacularly. Instead of destroying John and Rachel, it had forced us all to face our truths, to finally begin healing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making others suffer, it's about refusing to let past suffering determine your future. I opened my window to let in the night air, feeling truly free for the first time since that day in the hospital. Tomorrow would bring new babies, new chances, new choices, and I was finally ready for all of it.
The text message from Daniel lit up my phone screen at 2 a.m. Tiff, you might want to keep an eye on the financial news tomorrow. What goes around comes around. I stared at those words, remembering the exact moment my world shattered 3 years ago. The memory is still fresh, like a wound that refuses to heal properly. My name is Tiffany, and I was married to Lucas for 8 years before he decided to blow up our lives. It happened on a Tuesday evening of all days. I'd just finished a video call with a supplier for my online boutique when Lucas walked into our home office, looking like he'd aged 10 years in a single day. We need to talk, he said, loosening his tie. Those 4 words made my stomach drop. I followed him to our living room, where the setting sun cast long shadows across our wedding photos. What's wrong? He paced, running his hands through his hair. I don't know how to say this. Just say it, Lucas. I'm in love with someone else. He stopped pacing, finally meeting my eyes. With Luna. The room started spinning. Luna! My sister Luna! It just happened, Tiff. We didn't mean for it to... I cut him off with a laugh that sounded more like a sob. My little sister? Are you fucking kidding me? We've been seeing each other for 6 months, he continued, as if that somehow made it better. She understands me in a way. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare try to justify this. My phone buzzed. A text from Luna. I'm so sorry, can we talk? She's texting me right now, isn't she? Lucas asked, stepping closer. I backed away. Stay away from me. Both of you just stay away. Tiff, please, we need to handle this like adults. Like adults? I grabbed the nearest thing, a crystal vase he'd given me for our anniversary, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered spectacularly. Is that adult enough for you? He flinched. You're being hysterical. Hysterical? I laughed again, this time with real venom. My husband and sister have been fucking behind my back for 6 months, and I'm being hysterical. My phone started ringing. Hannah, my best friend. I ignored it. We didn't want to hurt you, Lucas said softly. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Lucas. You make choices. Both of you made choices. He sat heavily on our leather couch. I'll move out tonight. Stay with Daniel for a while. Your brother knows, Lucas nodded slowly. He doesn't approve. At least someone in this mess has a moral compass. I walked to our liquor cabinet and poured myself a generous glass of whiskey. How long were you planning to wait before telling me? Luna wanted to tell you weeks ago. I was afraid. I took a long sip. Afraid of what? Losing your comfortable life? Your reputation? Afraid of hurting you? Well, congratulations on failing spectacularly at that. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Luna's crying her eyes out. What did you say to her? I showed Lucas the message. Looks like my sister's already playing victim. Don't be like that. She's really torn up about this. Get out. My voice was eerily calm now. Get your things and get out. He stood up slowly. Tiff. And tell Luna she can keep the Cartier bracelet I gave her for her birthday. Consider it a parting gift for destroying my marriage. Lucas packed a bag in silence while I sat in the kitchen drinking whiskey and ignoring the constant stream of messages on my phone. When he finally walked to the door, he paused. I really am sorry, he said. I never meant for any of this to happen. You know what the worst part is? I looked him straight in the eye. I actually believe you, but that makes it even worse because you're not even brave enough to own your decisions. After he left, I called Hannah. I'm coming over, she said before I could speak, and I'm bringing wine. Bring the expensive stuff, I replied. Apparently I'm about to be single again. I know. Daniel called me. She paused. He's furious with Lucas. Good to know someone is. I finished my whiskey. Did you know? God, no, I would have told you immediately, she sighed. Want me to key Luna's car while I'm at it? Despite everything, I smiled. No, but ask me again tomorrow. After hanging up, I walked to our bedroom, my bedroom now, and started pulling Lucas's clothes from the closet. Each item joined a growing pile on the floor, and with each addition, I felt a little stronger. My phone buzzed one final time. Another message from Daniel. I've got your back, Tiff. Always have, always will. I looked at the growing pile of Lucas's belongings and made a decision. Tomorrow I'd donate everything to Goodwill. Tonight I'd let myself break. But after that I'd make damn sure that losing me was the biggest mistake of Lucas's life. 6 months after Lucas left, I was sitting in my newly rented office space surrounded by boxes of inventory when Hannah burst through the door waving a magazine. Have you seen this? She demanded, slapping the glossy publication on my desk. There they were, splashed across the society pages, Lucas and Luna at some charity gala, her hand possessively on his arm, both of them beaming at the camera. The headline read, Securities firm heir and fashion entrepreneur make stunning couple at annual children's hospital benefit. Fashion entrepreneur? I scoffed. She has a Pinterest board and calls herself an influencer. Hannah perched on my desk. You okay? Honestly? I gestured at the boxes around us. I'm too busy to care. The online orders have tripled since last month. That's because your designs are amazing. Hannah picked up one of our signature blazers. Speaking of which, Willie called me. He wants to meet with you. I stopped typing. Willie Wolfe was practically fashion royalty in our city. What? Why? Because your stuff is good, dummy. Really good. She tossed the magazine in the trash. He's hosting a dinner tonight. I already told him you'd come. Hannah, Get dressed, we're going shopping. She pulled me from my chair. And no arguing. You need this. 4 hours later, I was sitting across from Willie in one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, trying not to fidget with my wine glass. So, Willie said, studying me over his reading glasses, tell me about your vision. I took a deep breath. I believe in accessible luxury, clothes that make women feel powerful without bankrupting them. And how's that working out? We're growing faster than I can handle, I admitted. I need more space, more staff, more everything. Willie nodded slowly. I saw your ex-sister-in-law wearing one of your designs last month. Didn't credit you, of course. Of course not. I sipped my wine. She probably forgot where she bought it. Stole it, you mean? His eyes twinkled. Daniel told me what happened. I stiffened. You know Daniel? I know everyone worth knowing in this city, dear. He leaned forward. Including people who could help you scale your business properly. My heart started racing. I'm listening. I'm hosting a fashion show next month. I want your collection in it. I nearly choked on my wine. What? Your designs are fresh, practical, and beautifully made. With the right backing, you could be huge. He pulled out a business card. Come to my office tomorrow. We'll talk details. Later that night, I called Daniel. Did you have something to do with this? I demanded when he answered. Hello to you too, he laughed. And maybe I mentioned your name to Willie, but he already knew about you. Why are you helping me? There was a long pause. Because what they did was wrong. And because you deserve better. My phone beeped with another call. My mother. I ignored it. She's still taking Luna's side? Daniel asked. When isn't she? I sighed. Apparently I'm being difficult by not attending family dinners anymore. Screw that. Come to dinner with me instead. I'm meeting Willie and some investors tomorrow night. The next morning, I walked into Willie's office clutching my portfolio. His assistant led me to a conference room where Willie sat with 3 other people. Ah, perfect timing, Willie said. We were just discussing investment strategies. 4 hours later, I emerged with a business plan, financial backing, and a spot in next month's fashion show. My phone had 7 missed calls from Luna. I finally answered on the 8th ring. What do you want, Luna? Mom says you're working with Willie Wolfe now. Her voice was tight. How did that happen? Hard work. You should try it sometime. That's not fair. I work hard. At what? Posting Instagram stories about other people's designs? You're just jealous because Lucas and I are happy, she snapped. I laughed. Honey, I'm successful. You're just dating my leftovers. There was a sharp intake of breath. You're being cruel. No, cruel is sleeping with your sister's husband. This is just business. I hung up and walked to the full-length mirror in my office. The woman staring back at me looked different from the one who'd thrown that crystal vase 6 months ago. Stronger, sharper. My phone buzzed with a text from Hannah. Saw the announcement about the fashion show. Drinks tonight to celebrate. I smiled and typed back, can't. Business dinner with investors. Look at you all fancy now. Better not forget the little people when you're famous. Never. But I might conveniently forget to invite certain family members to my shows. Hannah replied with a string of laughing emojis. I looked at my reflection again and straightened my blazer. One of my own designs. In the glass, I could see the skyline of the city behind me, full of possibilities and promise. Watch me, I whispered to my reflection. Just watch me now. They want to manufacture in Bangladesh, Willie said, sliding the contract across his desk. The profit margins would be incredible. I stared at the numbers. He wasn't wrong. We'd make 3 times what we were currently earning. But something felt off. What about the working conditions? I asked. Willie shrugged. It's how the industry works, dear. Not my industry. I pushed the contract back. I built this brand on ethical production. I'm not changing that now. He smiled like he'd been expecting this response. Good girl. That was a test and you passed. A test? I needed to know if success would change your principles. He pulled out another contract. These manufacturers are in Portugal. Better working conditions, smaller margins, but still profitable. I was reading through the new contract when Hannah burst in. Turn on the news, she said. grabbing the remote from Willie's desk. The financial channel filled the massive screen on Willie's wall. Lucas was giving a press conference looking polished in one of his expensive suits. "Our firm is proud to announce record profits this quarter," he was saying. "We're expanding into emerging markets." "Emerging markets?" Willie scoffed. "More like risky gambles." I turned to him. "What do you mean?" "Your ex-husband is playing with fire. Daniel's been trying to warn him." My phone buzzed. Speak of the devil. "Daniel?" "Are you watching this circus?" he asked. "Yeah, what's really going on?" "He's leveraged the firm to hell and back. Luna's encouraging him, saying they need to think big." I could hear the frustration in his voice. I tried to stop him, but he won't listen. After hanging up, I found Willie watching me carefully. "Don't get distracted," he warned. "Focus on your show next week." I am focused. I signed the Portugal contract. And I'm doubling our order. That evening, I was reviewing designs in my office when my mother showed up unannounced. "You missed Sunday dinner again," she said, sitting down uninvited. "I was working." "You're always working." She picked up a sketch. "Luna misses you." I snatched the sketch back. Funny how she didn't miss me when she was sleeping with my husband. "Ex-husband," she corrected. "And they're in love. When are you going to accept that and move on?" "I have moved on. This," I gestured around the office, "is me moving on." "By competing with your sister?" "I'm not competing with anyone. I'm building something real, not riding someone else's coattails." "Luna says you're trying to sabotage her influencer career," I laughed. "By doing what? Making clothes she copies?" "She has real talent. No, Mum. She has my old life, my old contacts, and apparently my old moral compass." I stood up. "I have a meeting. Tiffany, please, she's your sister." Was my sister. Now she's just someone I used to know. After she left, I called Hannah. "Want to hear something funny?" I asked when she answered. "Always." "Apparently I'm sabotaging Luna's career by checks notes being successful. That's rich coming from Miss, I'll just post other people's designs and call myself creative. Mum thinks I should play nice. Your mum thinks the sun shines out of Luna's ass." Hannah paused. "Speaking of Luna, have you seen her latest post?" I pulled up Instagram. Luna had posted a photo of herself in one of my designs, a dress from the new collection that hadn't even launched yet. "How did she get that sample?" I demanded. "Check the caption," Hannah said grimly. Under the photo, Luna had written, "Sneak peek of my upcoming collection. So excited to share my designs with you all." My hands were shaking as I dialed Willie. "Someone leaked my designs," I said when he answered. "I know. I'm already on it." His voice was steel. "The sample's been traced. One of the new seamstresses was paid to steal it." "Luna?" "Through a third party, but yes. Want me to handle it?" I thought about my mother's plea for family harmony, about Luna's smug Instagram caption, about principles and karma and justice. "Yes," I said. "Handle it." An hour later, Luna's Instagram post was gone, replaced by a formal apology and retraction. The seamstress was fired, and I had learned a valuable lesson about trust. Willie called again that evening. "The show's been moved up," he said. "We're doing it in 3 days." "What? Why?" "Because strike while the iron's hot, dear. Your sister's little stunt just gave us free publicity. Let's use it." I looked at the wall of my office where I'd pinned my favourite design, a power suit that had started this whole journey. 3 days, I repeated. "Let's do it." "That's my girl." He paused. "Oh, and Tiffany, I've seated Luna and Lucas in the front row." "Why?" "Because success is the best revenge, and I want them to have an excellent view of yours." "The SEC is asking questions," Daniel said, sliding into the booth across from me at our usual coffee spot. "Lucas is in trouble." I stirred my latte absently. "How bad?" "Bad enough that he's drinking at noon." Daniel glanced around before lowering his voice. "He's been falsifying reports, Tiff, making the firm look more stable than it is." "And Luna?" "She's been pushing him to take bigger risks. They bought a new house last month, $7 million. I nearly choked on my coffee. $7 million. Money they don't have. He ran a hand through his hair. "I tried warning him again yesterday. He threw me out of his office." My phone buzzed with a notification. Luna had posted another Instagram story, this time criticizing unethical business practices in the fashion industry. A thinly veiled attack on my company. She's getting desperate, Hannah said, joining us with her own coffee. The fashion blogs are starting to question her credibility after the design theft scandal. Daniel leaned forward. Speaking of scandals, you might want to watch your back. Lucas has been asking about your suppliers. Let him ask. I showed them my phone displaying an email from Vogue. They're featuring my collection next month. Hannah squealed and hugged me. Finally, the big leagues. Willie's influence? Daniel asked. My designs, Willie's connections, I corrected. There's a difference. My phone rang. My mother again. I declined the call. Still not talking to her? Hannah asked. She sent me a 3-page text about how I'm destroying Luna's dreams. I rolled my eyes. Apparently, my success is making Luna depressed. Your success is making Luna face reality, Daniel muttered. Just then, a breaking news alert flashed across the cafe's TV screen. Lucas's firm was facing an investigation over financial irregularities. Daniel's phone immediately started ringing. That's Lucas. I should take this. He stepped outside, leaving Hannah and me watching the news coverage. You okay? Hannah asked softly. Honestly, I feel nothing. I watched Lucas's face on the screen, remembering when I used to know every expression, every gesture. It's like watching a stranger's life implode. Hannah squeezed my hand. That's progress. Daniel returned, looking grim. He's panicking, wants me to transfer some of my assets to help cover their positions. Tell me you said no, I said. Of course I said no. I'm not going down with that ship. He checked his watch. I have to get back to the office. Just be careful, Tiff. They're both getting desperate. After he left, Hannah turned to me. What do you think they'll do? Something stupid. I pulled out my laptop, which is why I'm calling my lawyer. That afternoon, I was in a meeting with Willie when my assistant rushed in. Luna's outside, she said. She's demanding to see you. Willie raised an eyebrow. Want me to have security remove her? No. I stood up. I'll handle this. Luna was pacing my reception area, looking expensively disheveled. Finally! Do you know how long I've been waiting? Do you know how many appointments I have? I countered. What do you want? This vendetta needs to stop, she snapped. Your success is built on destroying my reputation. My success is built on talent and hard work. Your reputation was destroyed when you stole my designs. I made one mistake. You made several, starting with Lucas. She flinched. That's different. We're in love. Are you? Or are you in love with his money? I stepped closer. Money that's apparently disappearing fast. Her face paled. You don't know anything. I know the SEC is investigating. I know you bought a house you can't afford. And I know you're here because you're scared. I'm here because you're my sister, she said, her voice breaking. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything. Until you proved it meant nothing to you. She grabbed my arm. Please, Tiffany, we need help. I carefully removed her hand. No, what you need is a reality check. And it looks like you're about to get one. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Her voice turned bitter. Watching us struggle while you succeed. I'm not enjoying anything. I'm just living my life. I walked to my office door. Something you should try doing without stealing from others. Mum was right, she spat. Success has made you cruel. No, Luna. Betrayal made me strong. There's a difference. I opened the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. After she left, Willie appeared in my doorway. Well handled. You heard? Every word. He smiled. You've come a long way from that woman who walked into my office a year ago. I looked out my window at the city skyline. I had good teachers. The best revenge is success, I finished. I know. No, he corrected. The best revenge is watching them realize what they lost. My phone buzzed with another news alert about Lucas's firm. From my window, I could see Luna's expensive car pulling away from the curb. Well, I said, looks like they're about to realize exactly that. The news broke on a Wednesday morning. I was in a design meeting when Hannah burst into the room, her face ashen. "Turn on CNBC," she said, grabbing the remote. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Palmer Securities under federal investigation. CEO Lucas Palmer steps down amid fraud allegations. My phone immediately exploded with notifications. Daniel's message came first. "It's worse than we thought. They're freezing all assets." Willie appeared in my doorway. "Your office." "Now." I followed him, leaving my stunned design team behind. Inside my office, he turned on multiple news channels simultaneously. "Their house has been seized," Willie said, pointing to one screen showing footage of police cars outside Lucas and Luna's mansion. "The feds moved fast." My mother called, then called again, and again. "You should answer," Willie advised, "before she shows up here." I picked up on the fourth call. "Hello, Mom? Have you seen the news?" She was crying. "They're saying terrible things about Lucas. Luna's devastated." "They're saying true things about Lucas," I corrected. "There's a difference. They need help, Tiffany. They need family." "Like I needed family when they betrayed me." She paused. "That was different." "No, Mom, it wasn't. I watched another news channel showing Lucas being escorted from his office. They made their choices. They're freezing Luna's accounts too. She has nothing." "She has you," I said coldly. "That's always been enough before." After hanging up, I found Hannah watching me carefully. "You okay?" she asked. "I should be celebrating," I admitted. "But I just feel empty." My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Tiffany." It was Lucas. He sounded broken. "Please don't hang up." "What do you want?" I messed up. Everything's gone. The house, the cars, our accounts. That tends to happen when you commit fraud. He made a sound between a laugh and a sob. I deserve that. But Luna doesn't. Please, she needs... "Don't." My voice was ice. "Don't you dare try to use my sister to manipulate me." "She's sleeping in her car, Tiffany. All her cards are frozen." "That's not my problem. You're really going to let your sister be homeless?" "My sister?" I laughed bitterly. My sister died the day she decided to sleep with my husband. After hanging up, I found Willie still watching the news coverage. "They'll come after your company next," he warned. "Try to smear you in the press." Right on cue, my assistant rushed in. "Luna's giving an interview on Channel 4. She's saying things." We turned up the volume. Luna, looking perfectly disheveled in designer clothes, was crying prettily for the cameras. "My sister's company used predatory practices," she was saying. "She deliberately tried to destroy my career out of jealousy. She couldn't stand seeing Lucas and me happy." Willie muted the TV. "Want me to handle this?" "No." I picked up my phone. "I'll do it myself." I dialed my PR team and put them on speaker. "Release the documentation. All of it." "The design theft evidence?" my PR director asked. "The cease and desist letters?" "Everything, including the security footage of her paying our seamstress to steal samples." Hannah gasped. "You had footage?" "I always keep receipts." I turned to Willie. "Can you call in that favor from the fashion blog network?" He smiled wickedly. "Already done. They're running the expose in an hour." By evening, Luna's interview had backfired spectacularly. The fashion blogs were running detailed timelines of her design theft attempts. Social media was flooded with side-by-side comparisons of my designs and her original pieces. Daniel called as I was leaving the office. "Lucas is trying to claim ignorance of the fraud," he said, blaming his CFO. "Will it work?" "No. I gave the feds everything I had. Emails, meeting recordings, all of it." I stopped walking. "You recorded him?" "Started the day he left you. I knew this would end badly." He paused. "I just didn't know how badly." My phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Luna's here. She's hysterical. Please call me." I showed the message to Hannah, who had stayed late to support me. "Don't you dare," she warned. "I wasn't going to." I put my phone away. "They made their bed." "Speaking of beds," Hannah said carefully, "she really is sleeping in her car." "No, she isn't. She's at Mom's being consoled and coddled like always." As if to prove my point, another text from Mom arrived. "She's sleeping in your old room, please, sweetheart. She needs her big sister." I deleted the message without responding. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said to Hannah as we left the office. "A year ago, this would have destroyed me. Now? I looked at the city lights, at my company's name on the building, at everything I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. Now it just feels like karma finally showed up to collect." The knock on my door came at midnight. I knew it was Luna before I even checked the security camera. Only she would have this kind of timing. She looked terrible. Designer clothes wrinkled, makeup smeared, holding a Louis Vuitton suitcase that had seen better days. "Mom kicked me out," she said when I opened the door. I leaned against the doorframe. "Why?" "Because I sold her jewelry to pay my lawyer." Her voice cracked. "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice, Luna. You just keep making bad ones." She pushed past me into my apartment. "I have nowhere else to go." "That sounds like a you problem." But I closed the door anyway. "Why did you really come here?" "Because you're my sister." She collapsed onto my couch. "Because you're the only one who always figured things out. Until you destroyed that too." "I know." She started crying. "I know I ruined everything, but I loved him, Tiffany. I really did." "Where is he now?" "Staying with some college friend." She wiped her eyes. "He won't return my calls." My phone buzzed. "Hannah, you okay?" "Security called, said Luna showed up." "I'm fine," I texted back, handling it. Luna was staring at my living room wall, covered in framed magazine covers featuring my designs. "You really made it, didn't you?" "No thanks to you." "I was jealous," she admitted quietly. "You were always the successful one, the smart one. I just wanted—" "What? My life, my husband?" "To be like you." She met my eyes. "But I couldn't build something of my own, so I took yours instead." Willie's call interrupted whatever I was about to say. "Turn on the news," he said without preamble. "They're arresting Lucas." Luna scrambled for the remote. There he was, being led out of his friend's house in handcuffs, looking nothing like the polished executive he'd once been. "Oh God," Luna whispered. "This is really happening." "The FBI found offshore accounts," Willie continued. "He was hiding millions. Luna's name is on some of them." I looked at my sister, suddenly understanding her presence. "You knew." She shrank back. "Tiffany, you knew about the accounts, and you came here because you think I'll protect you." "Please," she begged. "I didn't understand what he was doing. He just told me to sign things." "Like you didn't understand what you were doing when you slept with my husband." My phone rang again. Daniel this time. "The feds want to talk to Luna," he said when I answered. "They're offering a deal if she cooperates." I put the phone on speaker. "Tell her, Daniel, she's here." Luna listened as Daniel explained the deal. Immunity in exchange for testimony against Lucas. "He'll hate me," she whispered. "He already does," Daniel said bluntly. "He's been telling everyone you were the mastermind." She crumpled, finally breaking completely. "I never meant... I just wanted to be important," I finished. "To be special, to have what I had." She nodded miserably. "Call your lawyer," I said, surprising myself. "Take the deal." "You're helping me?" She looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Why?" "Because unlike you, I actually understand what family means." I walked to my desk and wrote down a number. "This is my lawyer's contact. He'll help coordinate with the feds." "I don't deserve this." "No, you don't." I handed her the paper. "But maybe hitting rock bottom will finally teach you something about consequences." Willie called again. "The press knows Luna's involved. They'll be at your building by morning." "Already?" I watched Luna making calls in my guest room. "Your doorman tipped them off. Want me to handle it?" I thought about my sister, about karma, about choices and consequences. "No," I decided. "Let them come." After hanging up, I found Luna standing in my doorway. "The lawyers want to meet tomorrow," she said. I don't have anywhere to stay." "The guest room is made up." I pointed down the hall. "But Luna." "Yes? This is temporary. And it comes with conditions. Anything. You'll tell the complete truth. About everything, the fraud, the design theft, all of it. She nodded slowly. And when this is over, you'll get a real job. No more influencer games, no more riding coattails. I don't know how to do anything else, she admitted. Then you'll learn, like I did, the hard way. My phone buzzed one final time. My mother. Is Luna with you? Please take care of her. I showed Luna the message. Funny how she never sent messages like this about me. I'm sorry, Luna whispered, for everything. I know. I headed to my room. But sorry doesn't fix things, Luna. Actions do. Will you ever forgive me? I paused at my door. Ask me again when you've earned it. The conference room felt too small for all the tension it contained. Lucas sat at one end of the table, his lawyer beside him. Luna sat at the other, looking anywhere but at him. I was there because both their lawyers thought I might help negotiate a settlement. This is a waste of time, Lucas snapped. She betrayed me. That's rich coming from you, Luna shot back. You told the FBI I masterminded everything. You pushed me to take those risks. And you pushed me to steal Tiffany's designs. Luna's voice cracked. We both did terrible things. I cleared my throat. If you're done with the blame game, can we focus on why we're here? Lucas's lawyer stepped in. My client is willing to take full responsibility for the financial fraud, provided Ms. Luna cooperates in returning certain assets. What assets? I asked. The offshore accounts, Luna's lawyer explained. Lucas claims they were set up without his knowledge. Lucas laughed bitterly. You knew exactly what you were doing. All those shopping sprees, the house, the cars. Where did you think the money came from? You told me the firm was doing well. Luna's mascara was starting to run. You said we deserved it. Enough. I stood up. You both knew what you were doing. You both chose to do it anyway. Now, deal with the consequences. My phone buzzed, a text from Willie. The press is outside. Handle this fast. Lucas noticed my phone. Already alerting the media. The media's been here, I said coldly. They're very interested in how the mighty have fallen. Luna started crying. I'll sign whatever you want. Just make this stop. It's too late for that, her lawyer said gently. But cooperation will help your case. Lucas stood suddenly. This is all your fault, Tiffany. If you hadn't been so successful, so perfect, Luna wouldn't have... Careful, I cut him off. Your prison sentence depends on what happens in this room. He deflated, sinking back into his chair. I lost everything. No, I corrected. You threw everything away. There's a difference. The lawyers exchanged documents while Luna continued crying and Lucas stared at the wall. My phone buzzed again. Hannah this time. How's it going? She texted. Like watching a car crash in slow motion, I replied. Want me to bring wine later? Bring the whole liquor store. Luna's voice pulled me back to the room. I'll tell them everything, she was saying. About the accounts, the fraud, all of it. Lucas's face hardened. Then I'll tell them about the design theft, the corporate espionage. Go ahead, I interrupted. I've already provided the FBI with all that evidence. They both stared at me. What evidence? Luna whispered. Everything. Security footage, bank transfers, all the documentation of your little schemes. I smiled without warmth. I learned to keep receipts. Lucas turned to his lawyer. Can we have the room? The lawyers looked at me. I nodded, and they filed out. Why are you really here, Tiffany? Lucas asked once we were alone. Because despite everything, I wanted to see if either of you had changed. I looked between them. Clearly, I was wrong. Luna reached for my hand. I pulled away. Please, she begged, tell me how to fix this. You can't fix it, but you can face it. I stood up. Take the deals, tell the truth, start over. Easy for you to say, Lucas muttered. You're on top of the world. I'm on top of the world because I built something real. I walked to the door. Try it sometime. As I opened the door, my mother was standing there. I heard about the meeting, she said. I came to support Luna. Of course you did. I stepped aside. She's all yours. Tiffany, wait. My mother grabbed my arm. Can't we just be a family again? I looked at Luna, still crying. At Lucas, defeated and angry. At my mother, desperately trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. We stopped being a family the day these two decided their happiness was worth more than mine. I gently removed her hand. Now we're just people who share DNA. You're being cruel, my mother said. No, I'm being honest. You should try it sometime. I walked out, leaving them with their lawyers and their consequences. In the lobby, Willie was waiting. Well, he asked, they're taking the deals. I pushed through the revolving doors into a sea of cameras and reporters. Any comment on your sister's involvement in the fraud? Someone shouted. How do you feel about your ex-husband's arrest? I stopped at the top of the steps, cameras flashing. The truth always comes out, I said clearly, and karma always collects. As the reporters erupted with more questions, I felt my phone buzz one final time. A message from Daniel. You did the right thing. Dinner tonight. I smiled, finally feeling lighter. Yes, I typed back. I think I've earned a celebration. The morning newspaper landed on my desk with a thud. Hannah pointed to the headline. Fashion Empire CEO Tiffany acquires rival brand in historic deal. Not bad for someone who started in a spare bedroom, she grinned. Have you seen the other headlines? Willie walked in, tablet in hand. Former Securities CEO Lucas sentenced to 15 years. They're calling it the fraud of the decade. I pushed both articles aside. Any word from Luna? She started her community service yesterday, Daniel said, joining us. Working at a women's shelter of all places. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Your mother called my office again, Willie mentioned. She wants to discuss a family reconciliation. Still trying to fix what can't be fixed, I muttered. My assistant knocked and entered. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Says she won't leave without talking to you. I expected my mother. Instead, Luna walked in wearing plain clothes and no makeup, a far cry from her influencer days. Can we talk? She asked quietly. Please. Hannah squeezed my shoulder as everyone filed out, leaving us alone. You look different, I said. The shelter doesn't allow designer clothes. She managed a small smile. Actually, they don't allow much of what I used to think was important. Why are you here? To give you this. She placed an envelope on my desk. It's everything I have left. The money from selling my clothes, jewelry, everything. It's not much, but I opened the envelope. What's this for? Restitution. For the designs I stole. The damage I caused. She met my eyes. I know it doesn't fix anything, but it's a start. Keep it, I said, sliding the envelope back. Use it to build something real this time. I don't deserve your kindness. This isn't kindness, it's investment in your redemption. I leaned forward. Prove me right. My phone buzzed. A news alert about Lucas's sentencing. Luna saw it too. I visited him yesterday, she said. He still blames everyone but himself. And you? I blame myself. Every day. She twisted her hands together. The shelter director says that's actually progress. A knock at the door interrupted us. Willie again. Sorry, but the board is waiting for the acquisition meeting. Luna stood to leave. I should go anyway. My shift starts soon. Luna? I called as she reached the door. How's Mom taking all this? She's struggling. Still wants everything to go back to how it was. Luna paused. I told her it never can, that maybe it shouldn't. After she left, Willie studied me carefully. You okay? Actually, yes. I picked up the acquisition papers. Let's go make history. The boardroom was packed with executives and lawyers when we arrived. As I took my seat at the head of the table, Hannah slipped me a note. Karma's not just a bitch, she's the CEO. I smiled, then addressed the room. Let's talk about the future. Later that evening, I found Daniel waiting in my office. Heard about Luna's visit, he said. You're a better person than most. Not better, just clearer about what matters. I gathered my things. Dinner? Actually, I had something else in mind. He handed me an envelope. Open it. Inside was a deed to a small storefront, the same one I'd dreamed of owning when I first started my business. It came on the market yesterday, he explained. I thought maybe it could be your first flagship store. Daniel, you built an empire from nothing, Tiff, but everyone needs a reminder of where they started. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Luna. The shelter needs business clothes for women returning to work. Any chance your company could help? I showed Daniel the message. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking about karma, second chances, and the difference between revenge and justice. I typed back, send me the details. Let's build something good out of all this. Daniel smiled. Willie was right about you. About what? Success really is the best revenge. No, I corrected, looking around at everything I'd built, everything I'd become. Success isn't revenge at all. It's liberation. We walked out together, past the wall of magazine covers, past the awards and accolades, past all the symbols of what I'd achieved. But it was the small framed photo on my desk that caught my eye, the one of me in my spare bedroom, surrounded by fabric samples and dreams. Ready? Daniel asked. I picked up my bag, leaving the newspapers and their headlines behind. Ready. Because in the end, it wasn't about revenge or karma or even justice. It was about building something stronger than betrayal, something more powerful than hurt. It was about becoming someone who didn't need revenge anymore. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.
The day my world turned upside down began like any other. I was in the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air when my phone rang. Glancing at the screen, I saw Dr. Jennings' name flash. My heart sank. Elaine Morrison, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Morrison, it's about your father, George. I'm sorry to say it's cancer, terminal. He might have 6 months, perhaps less. Dr. Jennings' voice was a blend of professionalism and sympathy. The news hit me like a physical blow. My father, the man who raised me single-handedly after Mom passed, was now facing his final chapter. Alone, the thought was unbearable. I found Ethan in his study, surrounded by piles of paperwork. Ethan, we need to talk. It's about Dad. He's dying. Ethan looked up, his expression barely changing. And what do you expect me to do about it? The coldness in his voice stung, but I pushed on. I want him to move in with us. He shouldn't be alone now, and we have plenty of space. Ethan scoffed, a sound that echoed off the walls of the study. Here, live with us? Elaine, be reasonable. This house is for us, not for charity cases. If you're so desperate, let him stay in the garden shed. But that's as far as I go. The garden shed. The words echoed in my mind, a cruel and mocking suggestion. How had my life come to this? Marrying Ethan, I had hoped for love and companionship, but all I found was a life of silent transactions and cold indifference. That night, as I lay in our bed, Ethan's snoring filling the room, I couldn't help but think back to the days of my youth. Days filled with laughter and dreams, days when the future seemed bright and full of possibilities. And now, here I was, contemplating setting up a home for my dying father in a garden shed, because my husband, the man who vowed to stand by me, had no room for compassion in his heart. The irony of it all was not lost on me. Ethan, who always preached about family values, was now turning his back on the most basic human decency. The realization was bitter, and it kept me awake long into the night. As dawn broke, a determination stirred within me. If Ethan wouldn't help, I would do it myself. I would make the garden shed a home for my father, a place where he could spend his final days surrounded by love and care, even if it was just for me. I rose from the bed, my mind made up. It was time to take a stand, for my father, and perhaps for myself too. As I embarked on the task of transforming the garden shed into a livable space for my father, memories of the past swirled through my mind, each one a sharp contrast to my current life. I remembered the days of my youth in our small but happy home, where laughter was our constant companion. My father, George, was a beacon of strength and kindness, filling the void left by my mother's early passing. He taught me the value of hard work and the joy of simple living. But our simple life took an unexpected turn when I was 19. The Daltons, a prominent and influential family in our town, appeared at our doorstep with a proposal that felt more like a decree. My father had accumulated a debt, a secret he had kept hidden, fueled by his descent into gambling after Mom's death. The Daltons offered a solution: marry their son Ethan, and the debt would be forgiven. The choice was presented as an opportunity, but it was a demand. My dreams, my aspirations, and my budding relationship with Michael, the boy next door who held my heart, were all swept away in that moment. Ethan Dalton, the man who now lay beside me night after night, indifferent to my existence, was a stranger on our wedding day. Our marriage was a transaction, devoid of love or warmth, a sacrifice I made to save my father from ruin. Over the years, I had learned to play the role of Ethan's wife, managing our home and assisting in his business, without compensation or gratitude. My life had become a series of routines, my dreams shelved and forgotten. Yet as I worked on the shed, painting walls and selecting furniture, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years began to stir within me. This project, though born out of necessity, was mine. It was a tangible connection to the independent and spirited girl I once was, a girl who believed in making a difference. As I stood back to admire my handiwork, the shed no longer seemed like a symbol of Ethan's cruelty, but a testament to my resilience. It was small, but it was filled with the warmth and love that our sprawling mansion so conspicuously lacked. I realized then that this shed was not just for my father. It was a sanctuary for my own weary soul, a place where I could reconnect with the parts of myself that I had lost in the years of my loveless marriage. It was in this small space, amidst the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings, that I made a silent vow. I would be there for my father, just as he had always been there for me, and in doing so, I would find a way back to myself, to the Elaine who dared to dream and love. The transformation of the garden shed into a cozy abode for my father was more than just a physical change. It was a reflection of my inner turmoil. As I worked, my thoughts often drifted to the strained tapestry of my marriage with Ethan. Our relationship, if it could be called that, was a study in silent endurance. Ethan was always more a businessman than a husband. He viewed everything through the lens of profit and loss, including our marriage. The warmth and connection that should have adorned a marital life were conspicuously absent in ours. We were like two parallel lines under one roof, destined never to meet. In the early years, I tried to breach the chasm between us. I attempted to take an interest in his work, to be the wife I thought he wanted, but my efforts were met with indifference, or at times with barely concealed irritation. Ethan had no interest in a partner. He wanted an accessory, someone to manage his home and host his business associates. As the years passed, I found myself fading into the background of Ethan's life. I was there, yet invisible, my existence acknowledged only when it served a purpose. The realization was a slow and painful awakening. I was living in a gilded cage, a bird with clipped wings. My father's illness and Ethan's callous reaction to it were the final straws. How could the man I had spent nearly 3 decades with show such disregard for basic human empathy? The realization that my life with Ethan had been devoid of genuine affection hit me with renewed force. But amidst this turmoil, there was a silver lining. My son, Daniel, was the one true joy in my life. Raising him had given me purpose, a reason to smile amidst the coldness of my marriage. Daniel, now a young man studying at university, was everything Ethan was not: kind, compassionate, and full of life. I often wondered what Daniel thought of his father's behavior, of the palpable tension that hung in the air whenever Ethan was home. But Daniel, ever the peacemaker, never voiced his concerns. He was the bridge between two worlds that refused to converge. As I placed the final cushion on the newly installed couch in the shed, a sense of accomplishment washed over me. It was modest, but it was filled with love and care, something that my vast, luxurious home lacked. This small shed had become a symbol of my resilience, a quiet rebellion against the life of silent compliance I had been living. It was a step, however small, towards reclaiming the parts of myself that I had lost in the shadows of my marriage. And as I looked at the shed, now ready to welcome my father, I made a silent promise to myself. I would no longer be a spectator in my own life. It was time to take control, to find my voice again. For my father, for Daniel, and for the Elaine who deserved to be heard. The days following the completion of the shed were a whirlwind of emotion and activity. My father moved in, his frail frame a stark reminder of the precious little time we had left. Despite his condition, his eyes sparkled with gratitude as he settled into his new abode. The small space was filled with love and memories, a sharp contrast to the cold luxury of the main house. During this time, Ethan's true nature became increasingly apparent. His visits to my father were perfunctory, devoid of any genuine concern. His indifference was a bitter pill to swallow, but it was not unexpected. What pained me more was the growing realization that I had allowed myself to be diminished, to become a mere shadow in my own life. One evening, as I was organizing old files in Ethan's study, I stumbled upon documents that laid bare the extent of his deceit. Bank statements, emails, and letters painted a picture of a man who was not just indifferent, but morally corrupt. There were dubious business deals, secret accounts, and, most shockingly, evidence of infidelity. The discovery shook me to my core. The man I had married, the father of my child, was a stranger. His betrayal was not just breach of our marital vows, but a complete disregard for the family we had built together. In that moment, something within me shifted. The years of suppressed anger and disappointment surged to the surface, fueling a newfound resolve. I could no longer be a bystander in my own life story. I started to secretly gather evidence of Ethan's misdeeds. Each document, each piece of evidence was a step towards my liberation. It was not just about seeking justice, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth. As the days passed, I became more determined. I began to plan my exit from this loveless marriage. My conversations with my father, once filled with shared memories and laughter, now often turned to discussions of the future. "You've always been strong, Elaine," my father would say, his voice weak but his eyes full of love. "You deserve happiness. You and Daniel. Don't let Ethan take that away from you." My father's words were a balm to my troubled soul. In his wisdom and love, I found the strength to envision a life beyond Ethan's shadow. The final push came unexpectedly. One day, as Ethan berated me over some trivial matter, something inside me snapped. His words, once capable of wounding me deeply, now fell on deaf ears. "I'm not your property, Ethan," I said calmly, the clarity in my voice surprising even myself. "I am a person, deserving of respect and love, neither of which you've ever given me." Ethan's response was a mix of shock and anger, but I was beyond caring. I had spent too many years under his thumb, and I would no longer allow him to control my narrative. That night, as I lay in bed, a plan began to form in my mind. I would leave Ethan, but not empty-handed. I would fight for what was rightfully mine and Daniel's. It was not just about financial security. It was about setting things right, about ensuring that Ethan faced the consequences of his actions. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I met with lawyers, gathered evidence, and prepared my case. It was a daunting task, but with each step I felt more empowered, more like the Elaine I had once been. And then, one sunny morning, as I sat in the shed with my father, watching the birds flit about in the garden, I knew it was time. I was ready to face Ethan, ready to end the charade of a marriage that had been nothing but a prison. "I'm going to do it, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to leave Ethan and start a new life. For me, for you, for Daniel." My father smiled. A fragile but genuine smile. "I've always believed in you, Elaine. It's time for you to believe in yourself." With that, I stood up, my resolve firm. It was time to close this chapter of my life and begin anew. Elaine Morrison was no longer a victim of circumstance. She was a woman in control of her destiny. The day I confronted Ethan was a day of reckoning. Armed with my gathered evidence and bolstered by a newfound sense of self-worth, I faced him in what had once been our shared study. The room, once a symbol of our joint life, now felt like a battleground. "Ethan," I began, my voice steady despite the tumultuous emotions within, "this marriage, our life together, it's over. I'm leaving you." His reaction was a mix of disbelief and scorn. "Leave me, Elaine? You have nothing without me. Where will you go? You think you can survive out there on your own?" His words, meant to intimidate, only strengthened my resolve. "I have more than you realize, Ethan. I have evidence of your infidelity, your shady business dealings, and your financial mismanagement. I'm not leaving empty-handed." The look of shock on Ethan's face was, in a way, satisfying. For years, I had been under his thumb, underestimated and undervalued. But now, the tables were turned. Over the following weeks, our life unraveled like a poorly knit sweater. The divorce proceedings were bitter, with Ethan trying to discredit me at every turn. But I stood my ground, backed by irrefutable evidence and a legal team that believed in my cause. As the truth of Ethan's actions came to light, his reputation, both personal and professional, began to crumble. The community we had once been a part of turned its back on him. His business associates distanced themselves, and even his closest friends began to see him for who he truly was. In a twist of fate, it was Ethan who ended up isolated and alone, much like he had made me feel all these years. The empire he had built on lies and deceit was now his prison, a constant reminder of his moral bankruptcy. The final divorce settlement was more than just a financial victory for me. It was a symbol of my liberation. I received a significant portion of our assets, enough to ensure a comfortable life for myself, my father, and Daniel. With the legal battles behind me, I focused on rebuilding my life. I bought a modest but beautiful home, not far from the university where Daniel was studying. It was a fresh start, a place where my father could spend his remaining days surrounded by love and care. The house quickly became a home, filled with laughter and warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, impersonal mansion I had left behind. My father's health, while still fragile, seemed to improve in this new environment, buoyed by the positive energy that surrounded him. As for myself, I found a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I took up gardening, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the time for. I also began volunteering at a local charity, finding fulfillment in helping others. The most significant change, however, was within me. I no longer saw myself through Ethan's eyes. I was no longer the timid, compliant wife, but a strong, independent woman who had faced adversity and emerged victorious. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, a sense of contentment washed over me. I had come a long way from the scared young girl who had entered a loveless marriage to save her father. I had fought for my dignity, for my right to happiness, and I had won. My journey was not just about leaving Ethan, it was about finding myself. And as I looked towards the future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with strength and grace. Elaine Morrison had finally come home. My name is Elaine, and at 38, I thought I had most of my life figured out. I had a loving husband, Michael, and a peaceful life until my mother-in-law, Clara, became an unsettling fixture in it. Her interest in our lives, while typical to some degree, was claustrophobic. Nothing prepared me for the cold vacuum that greeted me in our bedroom after the cheer of my mother's 65th birthday party. It was a gut feeling that something wasn't right, a prelude to the bad news I was about to discover. The spot on the dresser where my watch usually lay was empty. It was more than a watch. It was a milestone, a gift worth $12,000 from my mother on my 25th birthday, embodying her sacrifices as a single parent. It was irreplaceable to me. My eyes darted around the room, refusing to believe, but evidence to the contrary was stark and undeniable. "Michael, have you seen my watch?" My voice trembled, laced with a panic that was rising as rapidly as my heart rate. He appeared in the doorway with a composure that felt out of place. "It's okay, Elaine. It's here somewhere. Don't worry about it." He attempted to reassure me, his voice too steady. His calmness was unsettling. How could he be so certain that it was here somewhere? Tension crept into the space between us, as I considered the possibility that he knew something I didn't. "Don't call the police yet," he added quickly, as if he'd read my mind. But the suggestion was unnerving. Our home showed no signs of a break-in. Yet my gut told me it was more than a simple oversight. Was he hiding something? Thoughts of Clara and her thinly veiled admiration for the watch returned to me. Was that why he was so opposed to getting the police involved? Ignoring Michael's plea, my hands shook as I dialed 911. The gravity of what I was about to do weighed on me, but there was no other option. The silence from Michael as I explained the situation to the dispatcher was deafening. After hanging up, I faced Michael, seeking answers in his vague expression. "Why didn't you want me to call the police?" I demanded, but he just stood there, silent and evasive. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios, the pit in my stomach deepening. I had to know the truth. The watch was more than an accessory. It was the embodiment of my mother's love and the tangible proof of her strenuous journey through my upbringing. It couldn't just vanish, and yet it had. The air tensed as we waited for the police to come. Michael a statue of reservation, and me, a simmering pot of betrayal and shock. As far as days went, this was rapidly descending into the worst, and it was only just beginning. My fingers drummed on the kitchen counter, every tap a punctuation mark in my silent monologue of disbelief. Michael leaned against the doorframe, his eyes avoiding mine. The silence was oppressive, the weight of the missing watch, an elephant in the room that he seemed all too keen to ignore. "I can't believe you didn't want me to call the police, Michael. That watch wasn't just expensive, it was one of the last connections to my mom's hard work," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "How can you be so indifferent?" "I'm not indifferent, Elaine," he finally spoke, his voice taking on a hint of frustration. "I just think we should look for it more thoroughly before involving the police in this. Maybe it got misplaced or stolen," I interjected. "Michael, we've looked everywhere, and it's not here. It's not like me to forget where I put such a precious thing. You know that." He rubbed the back of his neck, his tell when he was uncomfortable. I knew him well enough to recognize the signs. He was holding something back. Suspicion gnawed at me, my trust waning with each passing minute. "You're not saying something. Do you know where my watch is?" I asked point blank, hoping for an honest revelation. Instead, he shook his head, a feeble attempt at reassurance that failed to comfort me. The uneasy feeling had lodged itself in my chest the moment we stepped into the house. Now it was growing roots. In the hours we'd searched, Michael had remained oddly composed, as though the disappearance of a $12,000 watch was a trifling inconvenience. It didn't add up, especially when Clara popped into my mind. She had never been subtle about her desire for lavish things, her eyes greedy whenever they landed on my watch. The police would arrive soon, and I was faced with a dichotomy: my once unwavering trust in Michael, or the unsettling thought that maybe he and his mother were not as transparent as they had seemed. "You didn't let her come here while we were away, did you?" I asked, dreading the answer. "No, of course not, Elaine," he replied with an uneasy chuckle. "Why would I do that?" I wanted to believe him, yet my instincts screamed otherwise. Michael's mother's shadow loomed large in our lives, her weekly visits blurring the lines between marriage and maternal rule. I recalled the way Clara would command our space as if it were her own, and Michael's lack of resistance infuriated me. The sound of the doorbell sliced through the tension. My head snapped towards it, the chime marking the arrival of the consequences, the descent of the abstract into the painfully tangible. Michael's face paled, and I knew that whatever came next could potentially unravel the life we built together. With a deep breath, I strode towards the door, ready or not for the revelations it would bring. The door creaked open to reveal two uniformed officers, their expressions a blend of professionalism and subdued curiosity. "Ma'am, we received a call about a potential theft?" one of them inquired, glancing from me to Michael, now standing awkwardly behind. "Yes, officers. Please come in," I said, mustering a welcome that my rattled nerves barely supported. As they stepped into the house, my resolve strengthened. The law was on our side now. Michael's mother, Clara, had overstepped her bounds one too many times, and if she had taken my watch, justice needed to be served. I led the police into the living room and recounted the events leading to the discovery of the missing watch. They jotted down notes, their eyes occasionally lifting to measure our reactions. "It's an heirloom of sorts," I explained, my throat tightening. "My mother gave it to me on my 25th birthday. It's worth a lot, but not just in money. It's sentimental." "I see," the officer's pen paused. "And you suspected Mrs. Clara, your mother-in-law?" His eyes peered into mine, searching for certainty. I nodded, flashing back to the weekend before. I had caught Clara ogling the watch with an intensity that was discomforting. When she asked to try it on, it almost felt wrong, but I couldn't find a graceful way to say no. There was this one time. My voice trailed off, lost in the memory of pure disbelief when Clara had audaciously said the watch would look better on her wrist and practically demanded I give it to her. The way Michael had danced around the issue had frustrated me then, but now it filled me with dread. Officer Jenkins followed my gaze to Michael, who was worrying the hem of his shirt with quivering fingers. "Mr. Michael, do you have any idea about the watch's whereabouts?" "No, officer." Michael's voice was a shade too quick, a note too high. "I love Elaine. I'd never let anything happen to her stuff, especially not something that meaningful." But his words, intended to reassure, did nothing to steady the churning in my stomach. Instead, my thoughts spun, piecing together bits of conversations, subtle glances, and Michael's strange reluctance for police involvement. They had to know something. Michael has a key to the house, and so does Clara, doesn't she, Michael? I pressed, watching him with an accusatory stare that made him visibly shrink. His eyes flitted away, guilt etched plainly on his face for the briefest of moments before he managed a weak denial. But I knew the truth even before he uttered it. The watch's absence was a confirmation of my fear that Clara's tendrils had reached into the very sanctum of our private life, deforming the sacredness of our space with her manipulation. And now, with the police here, with questions hanging in the air like a storm cloud ready to break, Michael and his mother's facade was about to fall away, revealing the ugly truth beneath. The officers exchanged a look that suggested they were no strangers to domestic conundrums woven with deceit. "Ma'am, has anyone else had access to your house recently?" Officer Jenkins asked as he closed his notepad. Only then did Michael speak up, his voice a faint whisper cracking under the intensity of the moment. "My mother has a key," he confessed, his admission hitting me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "What?" I sputtered, my eyes locking onto his in a silent demand for an explanation. "You gave Clara a key, without telling me?" He floundered under my scrutiny, his words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. "I thought it would be helpful. She said she'd help us out around the house while we were away. I didn't think you'd mind." Mind? My entire being recoiled at the betrayal. Never would I have imagined Michael going behind my back like that, especially not to cater to Clara's invasive ways. With every sentence he uttered, I felt the foundation of our marriage crumble. I turned back to the officers, my voice steadying with resolve. "She said she'd been cleaning here over the weekend when we were away. I didn't know. I didn't give her permission." Officer Jenkins took note, while his partner quietly stepped out to make a call. The atmosphere in the room thickened with unspoken truths and suppressed fury. The officers probably saw it all too often, families torn asunder by the very ties meant to bind them, but knowing that didn't make the sting any less acute. "If I could offer some advice," Officer Jenkins began, his tone switching to a gentler timbre, "keep the key issue separate for now. Focus on the missing watch. We'll need to speak with your mother-in-law as part of the investigation." I nodded, feeling the world tilt as my anger with Michael battled against my need to recover the missing piece of my mother's legacy. The other officer returned, gesturing for his partner to join him outside briefly. Alone with Michael, I searched his face for the man I thought I'd married, but all I found was a boy cowering from his mother's shadow. "Michael, I can't believe you did this. How could you?" I asked, my heart aching with a betrayal that felt as tangible as the cold air in the room. He started to respond when the front door clicked open again. The officers re-entered, their faces betraying nothing as they interrupted our private reckoning. "Mrs. Parker, we'll need to visit Mrs. Clara to inquire about the watch. Can you provide the address?" I nodded, feeling a mix of vindication and sorrow. This was it. The turning point where the wishful threads of trust and unity in our marriage would either unravel entirely or be spun into a more complex, resilient fabric. As Michael recited his mother's address, I braced myself for the inevitable storm ahead. The search for my timepiece had served as the turning stone, uncovering a foundation riddled with cracks, and its retrieval would mark the next chapter, of hard truths and perhaps even harder consequences. The sirens in the distance heralded a shift in the air, a palpable signal that the web of concealed truths was about to unravel. Michael's features clouded with remorse, but the time for regret had passed. I watched the officers make their steady way to the cruiser, preparing to confront Clara at her residence. "Elaine, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this would happen," Michael blurted out, his voice thick with desperation. But his words were empty to my ears, hollow promises that could no longer conceal the reality of his deception. "You should have thought of that before, Michael," I said coolly, moments before following the officers to their car. My mind was resolute, a mixture of anxious determination to retrieve the watch and simmering indignation over the betrayal. We arrived at Clara's house, a neatly kept bungalow adorned with Michael's childhood photos lining the mantelpiece and the heavy scent of lavender hanging in the air. The door swung open to reveal a flustered Clara, whose cheeks flushed a deep crimson upon seeing the uniforms. "Clara, have you seen a watch here? A watch that does not belong to you?" Officer Jenkins asked directly, his gaze sweeping the room for any sign of the coveted possession. Clara scoffed, feigning ignorance. "Why would I have Elaine's watch? Michael, tell them. I don't know what they're talking about." But Michael, now pale as paper, could barely meet her eye, let alone formulate a defense. The room seemed to shrink around us, every ornament and picture frame a silent testament to the secret she had hoped to keep buried. After what felt like an eternity, she faltered under the steely stare of the law. "Fine," Clara conceded, retrieving the watch from a drawer in her living room. It looked out of place amongst the clutter, like a stolen gem among false jewels. As she handed it over, unable to mask the flash of resentment in her eyes, a portion of the tension that had been building inside of me dissipated. My fingers wrapped around the watch, the cold metal banishing the hot flashes of anger that had pulsed through my veins. "We'll need to take you in for questioning, Mrs. Clara," the second officer said, her tone firm but not unkind. The ensuing silence was fraught with the unspoken acknowledgement that things would never be the same again. Clara's shoulders drooped, the fight bleeding out of her, as she collected a shawl and followed the officers out the door. Michael and I were left in the wake of the storm. The chasm between us widened beyond repair. He reached out for me, but I stepped back, my gaze locking with his in a moment of lucidity. "I trusted you, Michael," I whispered, the watch in my grip grounding me as I prepared to confront both our futures alone. "But that trust is broken now." The silence settled heavily on my shoulders as I stepped out of the house, leaving Michael behind, the watch safely in my possession, but my heart fractured in ways I hadn't anticipated. Soon, I'd have to pick up the pieces, but for now, I let the gravity of betrayal and newfound independence wash over me. As the officers drove away, the engine's hum and the fading sirens underscored the gravity of what had transpired. In the cool blue twilight of that tumultuous day, I sat on the steps outside Clara's house, clutching the recovered watch to my chest, the timepiece a bitter reminder of the intertwined love and lies that had governed my life. Michael emerged from the doorway, his footsteps hesitant as he approached where I sat. "Elaine," he murmured, his voice laden with regret. I didn't look up. "You lied to me, Michael," I stated plainly, cutting through the myriad of emotions with a scalpel-sharp clarity. "You put your mother before your wife, and now, here we are." He sat beside me, exuding a sense of defeat that seemed to fill the space between us. "I know," he conceded. "I was wrong, but I never wanted it to come to this." "Intentions don't always matter, Michael. Actions do. I can't just dismiss what happened because you're sorry." He nodded, his silence a tacit acknowledgement of the gulf that had widened too far to bridge with apologies. In the silent contemplation that followed, I found myself thinking about my mother. She'd raised me to be strong, to value honesty and integrity in relationships. But she also instilled in me the understanding that mistakes, even painful ones, were part of life's journey, opportunities for growth and self-reflection. I rose from the steps, the watch's weight a grounding presence on my palm. "I need time, Michael, to think about where we go from here, where I go from here." He didn't try to stop me as I walked away, each step stirring a potent mix of sorrow for what was being left behind and resolve for the uncertainty ahead. In the days that followed the incident, I contemplated my next steps. The divorce wasn't easy, accompanied by whispered rumors and sympathetic glances, but it was necessary, a step closer toward healing and away from a marriage marred by disillusionment. The once formidable figure of Clara, broken by the repercussions of her actions, had paid the price for the damage done. Her savings were depleted to compensate for the watch's restoration, and the rift between her and Michael grew into an insurmountable chasm. Faced with the harsh realities of her choices, she lived a muted existence, a shadow of her former self. Michael, burdened with regret and tarnished by the domestic turmoil that seeped into the corners of his professional life, left his job amidst the ensuing whispers and speculation. The echoes of our fractured union shadowed him long after our paths diverged. As for me, I returned to the watch box, placing the wristwatch back within the soft velvet confines. It represented a time both treasured and tormented. A period in my life that was over, but would forever realign my perspective on trust, love, and independence. The road ahead was mine to walk alone, and I took my first steps with the certainty that no matter what lay before me, I would rise above the challenges, fortified by the lessons of the past. I was ready to weave a new chapter, appreciate newfound freedoms, and cultivate a future forged from the strength gained in the storm's eye.